rat!
And I'm at the hour, so... Hello everyone, welcome in. Oh, that shouldn't be there. Ignore that, you didn't see a thing. Everything is very professional here on SkitterSkreetch stream. We never have any problem or scuff. Now I wonder if we're going to the VOD today. Let's go find out, I suppose. So, first things first, normally I congratulate people on this, but I do also feel like I need to offer some condolences on this, but congratulations to Abbe. And sorry, Plague. I'm sure you get it next time. I've been in exactly that position before, so I know how it feels. But let's see if we go into the void, shall we? 1, 2, 3. Oh, no, no void today. Okay, so yeah. What am I saying? So first things first. Hello everyone. My name is SkitterSkreetch. No, I've been exactly there. I can't say I'm familiar with it's got a Leon Kennedy jacket. This jacket is modelled off of my good friend Remny the Sator, who is I think he goes by the Geek now. He's a fellow I knew on Twitter. He made a post about how bomber jackets were cool, and I thought, yeah, that sounds good. And I made myself one out of some clothes I stole off an old wizard. So that's what's going on there. Yeah. Well, fair enough. I'll check it out. But yeah. But what am I doing? Oh yes. So yeah. But. Yeah. But bomber jackets is very popular and very cool. And so I'm sure that whoever this Leon Kennedy fella is, he has no fear of anyone needing to steal his wife on account of his fine tasting coats. What was I doing? Oh yes. So. Got to do the checklist. Yeah. Well, I mean, 25 is a big number. You got. I mean, like I can't fault you at all for doing your best, Abbe. You're basically at this point a raid boss. It's everyone else trying to beat you collectively. You're the one who stands alone. You've got to take every attack that you can. I appreciate it. But yeah. Anyway, what am I? Oh yes. So little checklist. No followers to thank. We've done the first. No badges. No new books. So what are we doing today? What's today's plan? Oh yeah, today we are doing Just So Stories by Rudyard Kipling. I thought after those Oscar Wilde ones sort of come good, I thought we'd give it another go with some sort of bedtime story style things. Lamp says these are very good. He recommends Kipling immensely. In fact, as you will see, these books are right underneath Lamp. So he's got his own little shelf up here, so that is the sign of endorsement. Yeah, we'll be reading them today. But as always, before we do that, we are going to do a little bit of poetry. Today's probably going to be a fairly chill stream, so I'm probably going to keep the light fairly close overall, but we will continue on with our Thomas Hardy. So, yeah. And also, at this point, I am going to say, I feel like I should probably be doing this before at the start of every stream, but again, this poetry section is probably the best time to be doing redeems and the like, so if you want to do them, now's the time. If you're like worried about interrupting the stories, this is also going to be like, this is a collection of short stories rather than any one thing, so you know, this would probably be a good stream for some interaction if you've got funny things you want the old skitter to do. But yeah. Anyway. I feel like I'm rambling. Probably because I am. I'm a rambling rat, that's the sort of being that I am. But yeah, so. Poetry. Ooh. Let's get on with it, shall we? Let me move the microphone over to our poetry reading section. And there we are. So. As always, we'll be continuing with the well, I say as always. It's a good stock phrase, but it's not useful here. We'll be continuing on from our last collection, Thomas Hardy's. The next poem being The Haunter. He does not think that I haunt her nightly. How shall I let him know? That whither his fancy sets him wandering, I too alertly go. Hover and hover a few feet from him, just as I used to do, but cannot answer the words he lifts me, only listen thereto. When I could answer, he did not say them, when I could let him know how I would like to join his journeys, seldom he wished to go. Now that he goes and wants me with him, more than he used to do, never he sees my faithful phantom, though he speaks thereto. Yet I companion him to places only dreamers know, where the shy hares print long paces, where the night rooks go. Into old isles where the past is all to him, close as his shade can do, always lacking the power to call to him, near as I reach thereto. What a good haunter I am, oh tell him, quickly make him know. If he but sigh since my loss befell him, straight to his side I go. Tell him a faithful one is doing all that love can do, still that his path may be worth pursuing, and to bring peace thereto. Hello, Nasta. You've come in just at the start of our poetry. Good to have you. I do hope the day is treating you well. The next of our poems, also by Thomas Hardy, The Voice. Woman much missed, how you called to me, saying that now you are not as you were, when you had changed from the one who was all to me, but at first when our day was fair. Can it be that you that I hear? Let me view you then, standing as when I drew near to the town, where you would wait for me, yes, as I knew you then, even to the original bare-blown blue gown. Or is it only the breeze in its listlessness, travelling across the wet mead to me here? You being ever dissolved to wan wistlessness, heard no more again far or near. Thus I, faltering forward, leaves around me falling, wind oozing thin through the thorn from no wood, and the woman calling. These are strangely wistful, aren't they? I hadn't realised when I picked them up, but I'm fairly certain this collection is for a past loved one, a wife. Maybe we should go somewhere a little more melancholy for the last of these, eh? Somewhere with an air more sad. I know the place. Certainly I want to go. Certainly. Certainly I want. His visitor. I come across from Melstock while the moon wastes weaker, to behold where I lived with you for 20 years and more. I shall go in the grey at the passing of the mail train, and need no setting open of the long familiar door, as before. The change I notice in my once own quarters, a formal fashioned border where the daisies used to be, the rooms new painted and the pictures altered, and other cups and saucers, and no cosy nook for tea, as with me. I discern the dim face of the sleep-wrapped servants. They are not those who tended me through feeble hours and strong, but strangers quiet who never knew my rule here, who never saw me panting, never heard my softling song float along. So I don't want to linger in this redecking dwelling. I feel too uneasy at the contrasts I behold, and I make again for Melstock, to return here never, and rejoin the roomy silence and the mute and manifold souls of old. And maybe I don't want to be here actually, maybe not. Maybe it was a bit of a mistake, eh? Somewhere a bit more comforting for the last one. A circular. As legal representative, I read a missive not my own, on new designs the sender give, for clothes and tints as shown. Here figure blouses, gowns for tea, and presentation trains of state, charming ball dresses, millinery, warranted up to date. And this gay pictured springtime shout of fashion hails what lady proud, her who before last year ebbed out, was costumed in a shroud. And we'll end the poetry there. Perhaps it was a little too melancholy. I felt a shiver. Blinked a moment. Let's change the microphone back. But maybe not back all the way. Maybe we keep a sort of half place today. A little closer, a little more intimate. Something a little, quieter, you know? These are meant to be bedtime stories, so let me read you to sleep, eh? First, a swallow of water, and some usual things to do. A little preface before these, something that I heard that is important. These stories was written for Kipling's daughter, his own dear one, though her name never appears in the text. And the reason they are called the Just So stories is because every night when he told them to her, they had to be just so. Just the way she knew them, not a word out of place, so she would wake from her slumber and fill in the missing words. So the day we should do this whole thing, just so. And to that account, if at any point during this reading you should happen to miss some words, either because I've misspoken, because there's been some technical fault, or because something has distracted you from me, do feel free to let me know, and I'm very happy to go back over the text. If you have thoughts, comments, questions, let me know. I'm very happy to chat with you. And as these are individual small stories, if you have a longer question, I'm happy to do it during the break. If at that same time you want to redeem any of the redeems that you're worried would interrupt the stories, that is a good time, as is right now before we begin. And to that end, I will take a short break here and have another drink of water while I allow you the chance to do so if you would like to. Cheers. But now, 30 seconds having passed without you choosing to interrupt, I can assume only that you do not have thoughts or questions immediately, nor any redeems. So to that end, without any further ado, if you are sitting comfortably, I will begin. Just those stories. How the whale got his throat. In the sea, once upon a time, oh my best beloved, there was a whale, and he ate fishes. He ate the starfish, and the garfish, and the crab, and the dab, and the plaice, and the dace, and the skate and his mate, and the mackerel, and the pickerel, and the really truly twirly-whirly eel. All the fishes he could find in the sea, he ate with his mouth, so. Till at last there were only one small fish left in all the sea, and he was a small 'stute fish, and he swam a little behind the whale's right ear, so as to be out of harm's way. Then the whale stood up on his tail and said, "I'm hungry." And the small 'stute fish said in a small 'stute voice, "Noble and generous cetacean, have you ever tasted man?" "No," said the whale. "What is it like?" "Nice," said the small 'stute fish. "Nice, but nubbly." "Then fetch me some," said the whale, and he made the sea froth up with his tail. "One at a time is enough," said the 'stute fish. "If you swim to latitude 50 north, longitude 40 west, that is magic, you will find him sitting on a raft in the middle of the sea, with nothing on but a pair of blue canvas breeches, a pair of suspenders, you must not forget the suspenders, best beloved, and a jackknife, one shipwrecked mariner, who, it is only fair to tell you, is a man of infinite resource and sagacity." So the whale swam and swam the latitude 50 north, longitude 40 west, as fast as he could swim, and on a raft in the middle of the sea, with nothing to wear, except a pair of blue canvas breeches, a pair of suspenders, you must particularly remember the suspenders, best beloved, and a jackknife, he found one single, solitary, shipwrecked mariner, trailing his toes in the water. He had his mummy's leave to paddle, or else he would never have done it, because he were a man of infinite resource and sagacity. Then the whale opened his mouth back and back and back, till it nearly touched his tail, and he swallowed the shipwrecked mariner and the raft he was sitting on, and his blue canvas breeches and the suspenders, which you must not forget, and the jackknife. He swallowed them all down into his warm, dark inside cupboards, and then he smacked his lips, so, and turned round 3 times on his tail. But as soon as the mariner, who were a man of infinite resources and sagacity, found himself truly inside the whale's warm, dark inside cupboards, he stumped and he jumped and he thumped and he bumped and he pranced and he danced and he banged and he clanged and he hit and he bit and he leaped and he creaked and he prowled and he howled and he hopped and he dropped and he cried and he sighed and he crawled and he bawled and he stepped and he leapt and he danced hornpipes where he shouldn't, and the whale felt most unhappy indeed. "Have you forgotten the suspenders?" So he said to the 'stute fish, "This man is very nubbly, and besides, he is making me hiccough. What shall I do?" "Tell him to come out," said the 'stute fish. So the whale called down his own throat to the shipwrecked mariner, "Come out and behave yourself, I've got the hiccoughs." "Nay, nay," said the mariner, "not so, but far otherwise. Take me to my natal shore on the white cliffs of Albion, and I'll think about it." And he began to dance more than ever. You had better take him home, said the stute fish to the whale. I ought to have warned you that he is a man of infinite resource and sagacity. So the whale swam and swam and swam, with both flippers in his tail, as hard as he could for the hiccups. At last he saw the mariner's natal shore on the white cliffs of Albion, and he rushed halfway up the beach and opened his mouth wide and wide and wide, and he said, Change here for Winchester, Ashuelot, Nashua, Keene, and stations on the Fitchburg Road. And just as he said Fitch, the mariner walked out of his mouth. But while the whale had been swimming, the mariner, who were indeed a person of infinite resource and sagacity, had taken his jackknife and carved the raft into a little square grating, all running crisscross, and he had tied it firm with his suspenders. Now you know why you were not to forget the suspenders. And he dragged the grating good and tight into the whale's throat, and there it stuck. Then he recited the following sloka, which, as you have not heard it, I will now proceed to relate. By means of grating, I have stopped your hating. For the mariner, he was also an Hibernian, and he stepped out on the shingle and went home to his mother, who had given him leave to trail his toes in the water. And he married, and he lived happily ever afterwards. So did the whale. But from that day on, the grating in his throat, which he could neither cough up nor swallow down, prevented him from eating anything except very, very small fish. And that is the reason why whales, nowadays, never eat men or boys or little girls. The small stute fish went and hid himself in the mud, under the door sills of the equator. He were afraid the whale might be angry with him. The sailor took the jackknife home. He were wearing the blue canvas breeches when he walked out on the shingle. The suspenders were left behind, you see, to tie the grating with. And that is the end of that tale. And there's something a little odd about this story that I'm sort of curious about. So there's a couple of pages in between here, in the middle of that story and then between this and the next one, which are pictures, which I can't show to you because I don't have the setup for it. And they describe them. That's quite. I'd like to show you these actually. They're good. They each have a little paragraph, which I suspect is by Kipling himself, because there's more details. Like in this one here. Here is the whale looking for the little stute fish who was hiding under the doorsill of the equator. The little stute fish's name was Pingle. He's hiding among the roots of the big seaweed that grows in front of the doors of the equator. I've drawn the doors of the equator. They are shut. They are always kept shut, because the door ought always to be kept shut. The ropey thing right across is the equator itself, and the things that look like rocks are the two giants, Moor and Core, that keep the equator in order. They do the shadow pictures on the doors of the equator, and they carved all those 20 fishes under the doors. The beaky fish are called beaked dolphins, and the other fish with the queer heads are called hammer-headed sharks. The whale never found the little stute fish till he got over his temper, and then they become good friends again. And yeah, like I say, there's an illustration to go with it. That's a nice. I didn't realise there was illustrations in this, or I might have saved it till I could have shown you. Still, we'll press on. Yeah, that's the end of the first story. They're good, these ones. I can see why they're written just so. They've got very readable air to them. I'll have a little swallow of water. I think we won't do the pictures today. I'll come back to this some other time when I can show them to you proper. And we'll look at them then. But yeah. And then before the next story, there's a little poetry as well. When the cabin portholes are dark and green because of the sea outside, and when the ship goes wop with a wiggle between, and the steward falls in the soup tureen, and the trunks begin to slide, when Nursey lies on the floor in a heap, and Mummy tells you to let her sleep, and you aren't waked or washed or dressed, well then you will know, if you haven't guessed, you're 50 north and 40 west. And then on to our next story, I suppose. How the camel got his hump. Now this is the next tale. It tells how the camel got his big hump. In the beginning of years, when all the world was so new and all, and the animals were just beginning to work for man, there were a camel, and he lived in the middle of an howling desert, because he did not want to work, and besides, he was an howler himself. So he ate sticks and thorns and tamarisks and milkweed and prickles, most excruciating ardor. When anybody spoke to him, he said, "Humph, just humph, and no more." Presently the horse come to him on Monday morning with a saddle on his back and a bit in his mouth, and said, "Camel, oh camel, come out and trot like the rest of us." "Humph," said the camel, and the horse went away and told the man. Presently the dog come to him with a stick in his mouth and said, "Camel, oh camel, come and fetch and carry like the rest of us." "Humph," said the camel, and the dog went away and told the man. Presently the ox come to him with a yoke on his neck and said, "Camel, oh camel, come and plough like the rest of us." "Humph," said the camel. The ox went away and told the man. At the end of the day, the man called the horse and the dog and the ox together and said, "Three, I'm very sorry for you, with the world so new and all, but the humph thing in the desert can't work. We would have been here by now, so I'm going to leave him alone, and you must work double time to make up for it." That made the three very angry, with the world so new and all, and they held a palaver, and an indaba, and a panchayat, and a powwow on the edge of the desert. And the camel come, chewing milkweed, most excruciating ardor, and laughed at them. And he said, "Humph," and went away again. Presently, there come along the Jinn, in charge of all deserts, rolling in clouds of dust. Jinn always travel that way, because it is magic. And he stopped to palaver and powwow with the three. "Jinn of all deserts," said the horse, "is it right for anyone to be idle, with the world so new and all?" "Certainly not," said the Jinn. "Well," said the horse, "there's a thing in the middle of your howling desert, and he's a howler himself, with a long neck and long legs, and he hasn't done a stroke of work since Monday morning. He won't trot." "Here," said the Jinn, whistling, "that's my camel, for all the gold in Arabia. What does he say about it?" "He says, 'Humph,'" said the dog, "and he won't fetch and carry." "And does he say anything else?" "Only 'Humph,' and he won't plough," said the ox. "Very good," said the Jinn. "I'll humph him if you will kindly wait a minute." The Jinn rolled himself up in his dust cloak and took a bearing across the desert, and found the camel most excruciatingly idle, looking at his own reflection in a pool of water. "My long and bubbling friend," said the Jinn, "what's all this I hear of your doing no work, with the world so new and all?" "Humph," said the camel. The Jinn sat down with his chin in his hand and began to think of great magic, while the camel looked at his own reflection in the pool of water. "You've given the three extra work ever since Monday morning, all on account of your excruciating idleness," said the Jinn. And he went on thinking magic with his chin in his hand. "Humph," said the camel. "I shouldn't say that again if I were you," said the Jinn. "You might say it once too often. Bubbles, I want you to work." And the camel said, "Humph," again. But no sooner had he said it than he saw his back, that he was so proud of, puffing up into a great big lolloping humph. "Do you see that?" said the Jinn. That's your very own humph that you brought upon your very own self by not working. Today is Thursday. You've done no work since Monday, when the world began. Now you are going to work." "How can I?" said the camel, "with this humph on my back?" "That's made a purpose," said the Jinn. "All because you missed those 3 days. You will be able to work now for 3 days without eating, because you can live on your humph. And don't you ever say I never did anything for you. Come out of the desert and go to the 3 and behave. Humph yourself." And the camel humphed himself, humph and all, and went away to join the 3. And from that day to this day, the camel always wears a hump. We call it a hump now, not to hurt his feelings. He has never yet caught up with the 3 days that he missed at the beginning of the world, and he has never yet learned how to behave. And again, after this one, there's a little bit of poetry. A camel's hump is an ugly lump, which well you may see in the zoo, but uglier yet is the bump we get from having too little to do. Kiddies and grown-ups too, if we haven't enough to do, we get the hump, camellias hump, the hump that is black and blue. We climb out of bed with a frowsly head and a snarly, yarly voice. We shiver and scowl and we grunt and we growl, our bath and our boots and our toys. There ought to be a corner for me, and I know there is one for you, when we get the hump, camellias hump, the hump that is all black and blue. The cure for this ill is not to sit still or frouse with a book by the fire, but to take a large hoe and a shovel also, and dig till you gently perspire. And then you will find that the sun and the wind and the gin of the garden too have lifted the hump, the horrible hump, the hump that is black and blue. I get it as well as you, if I haven't enough to do. You will get the hump, camellias lump, kiddies and grown-ups too. And that's how the camel got his hump. I have a swallow of water now. Is it good? They're simple and they're fun, and they're definitely kid stories, but they're fun. Well, I said they're fun, they're good. I just wish I could show you the little pictures with their little side notes, because there's just extra world building in here and I can't show it to you. I'll have to revisit this one at some point in the future. Maybe in a year or so when I've got more of a chance to show this sort of thing. Yeah. Anyhow. Now we have how the rhinoceros got his skin. Once upon a time, on an uninhabited island on the shores of the Red Sea, there lived a Parsi, from whose at the rays of the sun were reflected in more than oriental splendour. The Parsi lived by the Red Sea with nothing but his hat and his knife, and a cooking stove of the kind that you must particularly never touch. And one day, he took flour and water and currants and plums and sugar and things and made himself one cake, which were 2 feet across and 3 feet thick. It were indeed a superior comestible. That's magic. And he put it on the stove, because he were allowed to cook on that stove, and he baked it till it were all done brown and smelt most sentimental. But just as he were going to eat it, there come down to the beach from the altogether uninhabited interior, one rhinoceros with an horn on his nose, 2 piggy eyes, and few manners. And in those days, the rhinoceros's skin fitted him quite tight. There was no wrinkles in it anywhere. It looked exactly like a Noah's Ark rhinoceros, but of course much bigger. All the same, he had no manners then, and he has no manners now, and he never will have any manners. He said, "Ah," and the Parsi left the cake and climbed to the top of the palm tree with nothing on but his hat, from which the rays of the sun was always reflected in more than oriental splendour. And the rhinoceros upset the oil stove with his nose, and the cake rolled on the sand, and he spiked the cake on the horn on his nose, and he ate it, and he went away, waving his tail at the desolate and exclusive uninhabited interior which abuts on the island of Manzandaran, Skutra, and the promontories and the larger equinox. Then the Parsi come down from his palm tree, put the stove on its legs, and recited the following sloka, which, as you have not heard, I will now proceed to relate. Them that takes cakes, which a Parsi man bakes, make dreadful mistakes. And there were a great deal more in that than you'd think. Because 5 weeks later, there were an heat wave in the Red Sea, and everybody took off all the clothes they had. The Parsi took off his hat, but the rhinoceros took off his skin and carried it over his shoulder as he come down to the beach to bathe. In those days, it buttoned underneath with 3 buttons and looked like a waterproof. He said nothing whatever about the Parsi's cake, because he had eaten it all, and he never had any manners then, since, or henceforward. He waddled straight into the water and blew bubbles through his nose, leaving his skin on the beach, Presently the Parsee come by, and found the skin, and he smiled one smile that ran all round his face 2 times. Then he danced 3 times round the skin, and rubbed his hands. Then he went to his camp, and filled his hat with cake crumbs, for the Parsee never ate anything but cake, and never swept out his camp. He took that skin, and he shook that skin, and he scrubbed that skin, and he rubbed that skin, just as full of old dry, stale, tickly cake crumbs, and some burned currants as it ever could possibly hold. Then he climbed to the top of his palm tree, and waited for the rhinoceros to come out of the water and put it on. And the rhinoceros did. He buttoned it up with the 3 buttons, and it tickled like cake crumbs in bed. Then he wanted to scratch, but that made it worse. Then he lay down on the sand and rolled and rolled and rolled, and every time he rolled the cake crumbs tickled him worse and worse and worse. Then he ran to the palm tree and rubbed and rubbed and rubbed himself against it. He rubbed so much and so hard that he rubbed his skin into a great fold over his shoulder, and another fold underneath, where the buttons used to be. So he rubbed the buttons off. And he rubbed some more folds over his legs. It spoiled his temper. It didn't make the least difference to the cake crumbs. They was inside his skin, and they tickled. So he went home very angry indeed, and horribly scratchy. And from that day to this, every rhinoceros has great folds in his skin, and a very bad temper, all on account of the cake crumbs inside. But the Parsee come down from his palm tree, wearing his hat, from which the rays of the sun were reflected in more than oriental splendour, packed up his cooking stove, and went away in the direction for Otavo, Amygdala, the upland meadows of Anatariva, and the marshes of Sonopo. And for our end of chapter part. This uninhabited island is off Cape Garden Foy, by the beaches of Scotora and the pink Arabian Sea. But it's too hot from Suez, for the likes of you and me, ever to go in a P&O and call on the Cape Parsee. That's the end of how the rhinoceros got his skin. And I have a swallow of water. And I don't have anything to say about these, really. They're good and they're simple. And there's not really too much to say, really. They're not clever, they're not complex. The flow of them is good, they've got rhymes in them that are clever. And there's a good bit of emphasis in the way that they're written. The flow of dum dum dum, but there's just not much to say otherwise. Oh, here's a good story. I've always wondered this myself, so let's find out how the leopard got his spots. In the days when everyone started fair, best beloved, the leopard lived in a place called the Arveld. Remember, it was the low veld. Remember, it wasn't the low veld, or the bush veld, or the sour veld, but exclusively bare, hot, shiny Arveld, where there was sand and sandy coloured rock, and exclusively tufts of sand yellowish grass. The giraffe and the zebra, and the eland and the kodu, and the hartebeest lived there, and they were exclusively sandy yellow brownish all over. But the leopard, he was the exclusivest, sandiest, yellowest, brownest of all. A greyish, yellowish, catty-shaped kind of beast, and he matched the exclusivity of the yellowish, greyish, brownish colour of the Arveld to one hair. This was very bad for the giraffe and the zebra and the rest of them, for he would lie down by exclusively yellowish, greyish, brownish stone or clump of grass, and when the giraffe or the zebra or the eland or the kudu or the bushbuck or the bunterbuck come by, he would surprise them out of their jumps and lives. He would indeed. And also they were an Ethiopian. They were an Ethiopian with bows and arrows, exclusively greyish, brownish, yellowish man he were then, who lived on the Arveld with a leopard. The two used to hunt together, the Ethiopian with his bow and arrow, and the leopard exclusively with his teeth and claw. To the giraffe and the eland and the kudu and the quagga and all the rest of them didn't know which way to jump. Best beloved, they didn't indeed. After a long time, things lived forever so long in those days, they learned to avoid anything that looked like a leopard, or an Ethiopian, and bit by bit, the giraffe began it because his legs was the longest, they went away from the Arvel. They scuttled for days and days and days. They had come to a great forest, exclusively full of trees and bushes and stripy, speckly, patchy, blatchy shadows. And there they hid. And after another long time, what with standing half in the shade and half out of it, and what with the slippery, slidey shadows of the trees falling on them, the giraffe grew blotchy, and the zebra grew stripy, and the eland and the kudu grew darker, with little wavy grey lines on their backs like bark on a tree trunk. And so, though you could hear them and smell them, you couldn't very seldom see them, and then only when you knew precisely where to look. They had a beautiful time in the exclusively speckly, spickly shadow of the forest, while the leopard and the Ethiopian ran over the exclusively greyish, yellowish, reddish Arvel outside, wondering where all their breakfasts and their dinners and their teas had gone. At last they were so hungry that they ate rats, and beetles, and rock rabbits. The leopard and the Ethiopian, and then they had the big tummy ache both together. And then they met Bavian, the dog-headed, barking baboon, who was quite the wisest animal in all South Africa. Said Leopard to Bavian, after a very hot day, "Where's all the game gone?" And Bavian winked. He knew. Said the Ethiopian to Bavian, "Can you tell me the present habitat of the aboriginal fauna?" I meant just the same thing, but the Ethiopian always used long words. He were grown up. And Bavian winked. He knew. And said Bavian, "The game has gone into other spots, and my advice to you, Leopard, is to go into other spots as soon as you can." And the Ethiopian said, "That is all very fine, but I wish to know whither the aboriginal fauna has migrated." And said Bavian, "The aboriginal fauna has joined the aboriginal flora because it was high time for change. And my advice to you, Ethiopian, is to change as soon as you can." That puzzled the leopard and the Ethiopian. They set off to look for the aboriginal flora, and presently, after ever so many days, they saw a great, hard, tall forest full of tree trunks, all exclusively speckled and spotted, and spotted and spotted, dotted and splashed, and slashed and hatched, and cross-hatched with shadows. Say that quickly aloud, and you will see how very shadowy the forest must have been. "What is this?" said the leopard. "That is so exclusively dark, and yet so full of little pieces of light." "I don't know," said the Ethiopian. "It ought to be the aboriginal flora. I can smell giraffe, and I can hear giraffe, but I can't see giraffe." "That's curious," said the leopard. "I suppose it's because we have just come in out of the sunshine. I can smell zebra, and I can hear zebra, but I can't see zebra." "Wait a bit," said the Ethiopian. "It's a long time since we hunted them. Perhaps we've forgotten what they were like." "Fiddle," said the leopard. "I remember them perfectly on the Arvel, especially their marrow bones. Giraffe is about 7 feet high, of exclusively fubulous golden yellow from head to heel. And zebra is about 4.5 feet high, of exclusively grey fawn colour from head to heel." Said the Ethiopian, looking into the speckly, spickly shadows of the aboriginal flora forest. "Then they ought to show up in this dark place like ripe bananas in a smokehouse." They didn't. The leopard and the Ethiopian hunted all day, and though they could smell them and hear them, they never saw one of them. "For goodness sake," said the leopard at tea time, "let us wait till it gets dark. This daylight hunting is a perfect scandal." So they waited till dark, and the leopard heard something breathing sniffly in the starlight that fell all stripy through the branches, and he jumped at the noise, and it smelt like zebra, and it felt like zebra, and when he knocked it down it kicked like zebra, but he couldn't see it. So he said, "Be quiet, oh you person without any form. I'm going to sit on your head till morning, because there is something about you that I don't understand." Presently he heard a grunt and a crash and a scramble, and the Ethiopian called out, "I've caught a thing that I can't see. It smells like giraffe and it kicks like giraffe, but it hasn't any form." "Don't you trust it," said the leopard. "Sit on its head till the morning, same as me. They haven't any form, any of them." So they sat down on them hard till bright morning time, and then Leopard said, "What have you at the end of the table, brother?" The Ethiopian scratched his head and said, Ought to be exclusively a rich fulvous orange tawny from head to heel, and it ought to be giraffe, but it's covered all over with chestnut blotches. What have you at your end of the table, brother? And the leopard scratched his head and said, it ought to be exclusively a delicate greyish fawn, and it ought to be zebra. It's covered all over with black and purple stripes. What in the world have you been doing to yourself, zebra? Don't you know that if you're in the Arvelt, I can see you 10 miles off? You ain't any farm. Yes, said the zebra, but this isn't the High Veldt, can't you see? I can now, said the leopard, but I couldn't all yesterday. How's it done? Let us up, said the zebra, and we will show you. They let the zebra and the giraffe get up. The zebra moved away to some little thorn bushes, where the sunlight fell all stripy, and giraffe moved off to some tallish trees, where the shadows fell all blotchy. Now watch, said the zebra and the giraffe. This is the way it's done. 1, 2, 3, and where's your breakfast? Leopard stared, and the Ethiopian stared. All they could see was stripy shadows and blotched shadows in the forest, and there a sign of zebra and giraffe. They had just walked off and hidden themselves in the shadowy forest. Aye, aye, said the Ethiopian. That's a trick worth learning. Take a lesson by it, leopard. You show up in this dark place like a bar of soap in a coal skull. Aye, said the leopard. Would it surprise you very much to know that you show up in this dark place like a mustard plaster on a sack of coal? Our calling names won't catch dinner, said the Ethiopian. The long and the little of it is that we don't match our backgrounds. I'm going to take Bavian's advice. He told me I ought to change. Since I've nothing to change except my skin, I'm going to change that. What to? Said the leopard, tremendously excited. To a nice working blackish brownish colour, with a little purple in it, and touches a slaty blue. It'll be the very thing for hiding in hollows and behind trees. So he changed his skin then and there. The leopard was more excited than ever. He'd never seen a man change his skin before. What about me? He said, when the Ethiopian had worked his last little finger into his fine new black skin. You take Blavian's advice too. He told you to go to spots. So I did, said the leopard. I went into other spots as fast as I could. I went into this spot with you, and a lot of good it has done me. Ah, said the Ethiopian. Bavian didn't mean spots in South Africa. He meant spots on your skin. I see you say that, said the leopard. Think a giraffe, said the Ethiopian. Or if you prefer stripes, think a zebra. They find their spots and stripes give them perfect satisfaction. Said the leopard. I wouldn't look like a zebra, not forever, sir. I'll make up your mind, said the Ethiopian. I hate to go hunting without you, but I must if you insist on looking like a sunflower against a tiled fence. I'll take spots then, said the leopard. But don't make them too vulgar big. I wouldn't look like giraffe, not forever, sir. I'll make them with the tips of my finger, said the Ethiopian. There's plenty of black left on my skin. Stand over. And the Ethiopian put his 5 fingers close together. There were plenty of black left on his new skin still, and pressed them all over the leopard. Wherever the 5 fingers touched, they left 5 little black marks all close together. You can see them on any leopard skin you like, best beloved. Sometimes the fingers slipped, and the marks got a little blurred. But if you look closely at any leopard, now you will see that there are always 5 spots, of 5 fat black fingertips. Now you are a beauty, said the Ethiopian. You can lie out on the bare ground and look like an heap of pebbles. You can lie out on the naked rocks and look like a piece of pudding stone. You can lie out on a leafy branch and look like sunshine sitting through the leaves. And you can lie right across the centre of a path and look like nothing in particular. Think of that and purr. But if I'm all this, said the leopard, why didn't you go spotted too? These were so nice. Plain black's best for a nigger, said the Ethiopian. Now come along and we'll see if we can't get even with Mr. 123, where's your breakfast? So they went away and lived happy ever after, best beloved, that is all. Oh, now and then you'll hear grown-ups say, can the Ethiopian change his skin or the leopard his spots? I don't think even grown-ups would keep on saying such silly things if the leopard and the Ethiopian hadn't done it once, do you? They will never do it again, best beloved. They are quite contented as they are. And a little bit of perch after the thing. I am the most wise Bavian, saying in my most wise tones, let's melt into the landscape, just us two by our lones. People have come in a carriage, calling, but Mummy is there. Yes, I can go if you take me. Nurse says she don't care. Let's go up to the pigsties and sit on the farmyard rails. Let's say things to the bunnies and watch them skitter their tails. Let's do anything, Daddy, so long as it's you and me. And go and truly exploring and not being in till tea. Here's your boots I've brought 'em, and here's your cap and stick. And here's your pipe and tobacco. Come along out of it, quick. Well, I suppose that's the danger with any of these older stories, isn't it? Get a little bit of the old racial animus in there, but let me have a quick swallow of water. But yeah, let's think about that one aside from the slur at the end. Even apart from that, I do think it's the weakest of them so far. It's longer and it's not quite as tight. And there's no real moral, like there's not really a moral or sort of surprise in it. It's not an how it happened, other than, well, they chose to be that way. Which is a little bit disappointing compared to the other ones. The poem at the end is a bit different too. A little more personal, a little more addressed to the person involved. Makes me wonder about it. But sometimes you just had enough one, eh? So, let's press on along, shall we? Next up we have The Elephant's Child. In the eye and fire of times, the elephant, our best beloved, had no trunk. He had only a blackish, bulgy nose, as big as a boot. He could wriggle about from side to side. He couldn't pick up things with it. There were one elephant, a new elephant, an elephant's child, who was full of insatiable curiosity, and that means he asked ever so many questions. And he lived in Africa, and he filled all Africa with insatiable curiosities. He asked his tall aunt, the ostrich, why her tail feathers grew just so. His tall aunt, the ostrich, spanked him with her hard claw. He asked his tall uncle, the giraffe, what made his skin spotty. And his tall uncle, the giraffe, spanked him with his hard hoof. And still he was full of satiable curiosity. He asked his broad aunt, the hippopotamus, why her eyes was red. And his broad aunt, the hippopotamus, spanked him with her broad hoof. And he asked his hairy uncle, the baboon, why melons tasted just so. And his hairy uncle, the baboon, spanked him with his hairy paw. And still he was full of satiable curiosity. He asked questions about everything that he saw or heard or felt or smelt or touched. And all his uncles and his aunts spanked him, and still he was full of satiable curiosity. One fine morning, in the middle of the procession of the equinoxes, his satiable elephant child asked a new fine question he had never asked before. He asked, "What does a crocodile have for dinner?" And everybody said hush, in a loud and dreadful tone. They spanked him immediately and directly without stopping for a long time. By and by, when that was finished, he came upon Kolokolo bird sitting in the middle of a wait a bit thorn bush. And he said, "My father has spanked me, and my mother has spanked me. All my aunts and my uncles have spanked me for my satiable curiosity. And still I want to know what the crocodile has for dinner." And the Kolokolo bird said with a mournful cry, "Go to the banks of the great green, greasy Limpopo River. We'll set about with fever trees and find out." The very next morning, when there were nothing left of the equinoxes because the procession had proceeded according to precedent, his satiable elephant's child took 100 pounds of bananas, a little short red card, 100 pounds of sugar cane, the long purple card, and 17 melons, the green crackly card, and said to his dear families, "Goodbye, I'm going to the great grey green greasy Limpopo River." all set about with fever trees to find out what the crocodile has for dinner. And they all spanked him once more for luck, though he asked him most politely to stop. I'll have a quick drink of water, thank you kindly, Abbo. Slancher, you're off. I do appreciate it. Though he asked him most politely to stop. And he went away, a little warm, but not at all astonished, eating melons and throwing the rind about because he could not pick it up. Went from Grahamstown to Kimberley, and from Kimberley to Calmer's Country, and from Calmer's Country he went east by north, eating melons all the time, till at last he come to the banks of the great grey-green greasy Limpopo River, all set about with fever trees, precisely as the Colo bird had said. Now, you must know and understand, O best beloved, until that very week and day and hour and minute, his satiable elephant child had never seen a crocodile, and did not know what one were like. It were all his satiable curiosity. The first thing that he found were a bar-coloured puffin rock snake curled around a rock. "Excuse me," said the elephant's child, most politely, "but have you seen such a thing as a crocodile in these promiscuous parts?" "Have I seen a crocodile?" said the bar-collared python rock snake, in a voice of dreadful scorn. "What will you ask me next?" "Excuse me," said the elephant's child, "could you kindly tell me what one has for dinner?" And the bar-coloured python rock snake uncoiled itself very quickly from the rock, and spanked the elephant's child with his scalesome, flailsome tail. "That is odd," said the elephant's child. "It's my father and mother and my uncle and my aunt, not to mention my other aunt, the hippopotamus, my other uncle, the baboon, have all spanked me for my satiable curiosity, and I suppose this is the same thing." So he said goodbye, very politely, to the bar-coloured python rock snake, and opened the coil up on the rock again, and went on, a little warm, but not all astonished, eating melons and throwing the rind about, because he could not pick it up, till he trod on what he thought were a log of wood, at the very edge of the great green greasy Limpopo River, all set about with fever trees. It were really the crocodile, O best beloved, and the crocodile winked one eye, like this. "Excuse me," said the elephant's child, most politely, "had you happen to have seen a crocodile in these promiscuous parts?" Then the crocodile winked the other eye, and lifted half his tail out of the mud, and the elephant's child stepped back most politely, because he did not want to be spanked again. "Come hither, little one," said the crocodile. "Why do you ask such things?" "Excuse me," said the elephant's child, most politely. "My father spanked me and my mother spanked me, not to mention my tall aunt, the ostrich, and my tall uncle, the giraffe, who can kick ever so hard, as well as my broad aunt, the hippopotamus, and my hairy uncle, the baboon, and including the bar-coloured python rock snake, with all the scales and flails and tail just up the bank, who spanks harder than any of them. And so, if it's quite the same to you, I don't want to be spanked anymore." "Come hither, little one," said the crocodile, "for I am the crocodile." And he wept crocodile tears to show it was quite true. And the elephant's child grew all breathless and panted and kneeled down on the bank and said, "You're the very person I've been looking for all these long days. Will you please tell me what you have for dinner?" "Come hither, little one," said the crocodile, "and I'll whisper." And we're about to enter the ads breaks there now, so I'll call it there for the moment. Now, I've got an inkling I might have about it is that the elephant's going to get his nose. And there's the ads on it. So, what shall we say about this then, set of stories then? Well, I say the first three I was very impressed with. They're not very complex, they're just simple and they're clearly kids' stories, but they do a good job of being kids' stories. They're they flow well and they're simple and they're enjoyable. And I mean, that's what you got to say, really, isn't it? And they flow well, they're really well written in the sort of cadence of them as well, that's what I should be saying. But, what else is there to say about them? Not too much. The fourth one didn't strike me quite so well. I mean, obviously, I'm never a fan when a story has some sort of racial epithets in it, though I do, I read them because it's important to remember how the past actually were. Even when it's bad, especially when it's bad to some extent. But the story itself were a little bit, it dragged on a bit. And this one is a little bit longer than I think the first one, but it's doing a better job of doing the whole cadence, the repetition and all that, which I think is better for it. But I don't know. It's not striking me quite so well as the first ones. I'll say that much. Still, these are fun. I enjoy it. I mean, it's a book that's clearly like meant to be fun for kids. I really wish I could show the illustrations. They're not. I mean, they're not exceptional or anything. I think they were just done by the author, but they're just nice. They add a little bit to it. You got a little poem after each one. It's not the best thing I've ever read. It's not like as polished as some of these, but it's a very, I don't know, personal story, personal sort of feeling book. I appreciate it for that. You can tell someone cared. But yeah, I'm not sure how much we're going to get done tonight. It's quite a long book by page count, but it's quite short by, some of the stories are quite simple, and there's all these pages of sort of illustrations that I'm not doing. Poetry is quite short for the amount of space it takes, so I don't know. I don't think we'll finish it, but we'll see how we get on. I don't really have any plans for the night. I sort of come in like, I don't know. I thought about doing a different story, but it was a bit long. I didn't want to hurt my throat if we're going to be doing Tory Tuesday tomorrow, so yeah, I don't really have any plans at all. So have you any thoughts, ideas? I don't know really. Don't know at all. But here comes the end of the ad, so I'll have my other swallow of water and we'll press on, shall we? And that should be us back, so where was we? Ah, yes. Come hither, little one, said the crocodile, and I'll whisper. Then the elephant's child put his head down close to the crocodile's musky, tusky mouth, and the crocodile caught him by his little nose, which up to that very week, day, an hour, and minute had been no bigger than a boot, though much more useful. I think, said the crocodile, and he said it between his teeth like this, I think today I will begin with elephant's child. At this, our best beloved, the elephant's child, were much annoyed, and he said, speaking through his nose like this, No, you are hurting me. The bar-coloured parfum rock snake scuttled down from the bank and said, My young friends, if you do not now immediately and instantly pull as hard as ever you can, it is my opinion that your acquaintance in the large pattern leather ulster, and by this he meant the crocodile, will jerk you into yonder limpid stream before you can say Jack Robinson. This is the way the bar-coloured rock parfum snake always talks. Then the elephant's child sat back on his little haunches and pulled and pulled and pulled, and his nose began to stretch. And the crocodile floundered into the water, making it all creamy with great sweeps of his tail, and he pulled, and he pulled and pulled and pulled. The elephant's child's nose kept on stretching. The elephant's child spread all his little four legs and pulled and pulled and pulled, and his nose kept on stretching, and the crocodile threshed his tail like an oar, and he pulled and pulled and pulled, and at each end the elephant's child's nose grew longer and longer, and it hurt him heejus. Then the elephant's child felt his legs slipping, and he said through his nose, which was now nearly 5 feet long, This is too much for me. The bar-coloured rock parfum snake come down from the bank, and knotted itself in a double clovitch round the elephant child's arm legs, and said, Rash and inexperienced traveller, we will now seriously devote ourselves to a little high attention, because if we do not, it is my opinion that yonder self-propelling man-o'-war, with the armour-plated upper deck, and by this, our best beloved, he meant the crocodile, will permanently vitiate your future career. That is the way all bar-coloured parfum rock snakes always talk. So he pulled, and the elephant's child pulled, and the crocodile pulled. But the elephant's child and the bar-coloured parfum rock snake pulled the hardest, At last the crocodile let go of the elephant's child's nose with a plop that you could hear all up and down the Limpopo. Then the elephant's child sat down most hard and sudden. But first he was careful to say, "Thank you," to the bark-coloured parfum rock snake. And next he was kind to his poor pulled nose and wrapped it all up in a cool banana leaf and hung it in the great grey-green greasy Limpopo to cool. "What are you doing that for?" said the bark-coloured parfum rock snake. "Excuse me," said the elephant's child. "My nose is badly out of shape and I'm waiting for it to shrink." "Then you will have to wait a long time," said the bark-coloured parfum rock snake. "Some people do not know what is good for them." The elephant's child sat there for 3 days waiting for his nose to shrink. It never grew any shorter, and besides it made him squint. For oh, best beloved, you will see and understand that the crocodile had pulled it out into a really truly trunk, same as all elephants had today. At the end of the 3rd day, a fly come and stung him on the shoulder, and before he knew what he would do, he lifted up his trunk and hit that fly dead at the end of it. "Vantage number 1, said the bark-coloured parfum rock snake. "You couldn't have done that with a mere smear nose. Try and eat a little now." Before he thought what he was doing, the elephant's child put out his trunk and plucked a large bundle of grass, dusted it clean against his forelegs, and stuffed it into his own mouth. "Vantage number 2, said the bark-coloured parfum rock snake. "You couldn't always have done that with a mere smear nose. Don't you think the sun is very hot here?" "It is," said the elephant's child, and before he thought what he was doing, he slooped up a sloop of mud from the banks of the greasy green Limpopo and slapped it on his head, where it made a cool, sloopy, sloshy mudcap, all trickly behind the ears. "Vantage number 3, said the bark-coloured parfum rock snake. "You couldn't have done that with a mere smear nose. Now how do you feel about being spanked again?" "Excuse me," said the elephant's child, "but I should not like it." "How would you like to spank somebody?" said the bark-coloured parfum rock snake. "I should like it very much indeed," said the elephant's child. "Well," said the bark-coloured parfum rock snake, "you will find that new nose of yours very useful to spank people with." So the elephant's child went home across Africa, frisking and whisking his trunk. When he wanted fruit to eat, he pulled fruit down from a tree instead of waiting for it to fall as he used to do. When he wanted grass, he plucked it up from the ground instead of going on his knees as he used to do. When the flies bit him, he broke off the branch of a tree and used it as a flower whisk. And he made himself a new, cool, slushy, squashy mudcap wherever the sun were on. When he felt lonely walking through Africa, he sunk himself down his trunk, and the noise were louder than several brass bands. He went especially out of his way to find a broad hippopotamus, she was no relation of his, and he spanked her very hard to make sure that the bark-coloured parfum rock snake had spoken the truth about his new trunk. The rest of the time he picked up the melon rinds that he had dropped on his way to the Limpopo, for he truly were a tidy pachyderm. One dark evening he come back to his dear families, and he coiled up his trunk and said, "How d'ye do?" They was very glad to see him, and immediately said, "Come here and be spanked for your satiable curiosity." "Pooh," said the elephant's child. "I don't think you people know anything about spanking, but I do, and I'll show you." Then he uncurled his trunk, and knocked 2 of his dear brothers head over heels. "Oh, bananas," said they. "Where'd you learn that trick, and what have you done to your nose?" "I got a new one from the crocodile on the banks of the great grey-green greasy Limpopo River," said the elephant's child. "I asked him what he had for dinner, and he gave me this to keep." "It looks very ugly," said his hairy uncle the baboon. "It does," said the elephant's child. "It's very useful." And he picked up his hairy uncle, the baboon, by one hairy leg, and hove him into the hornet's nest. Then that bad elephant's child spanked all his dear families for a long time, till he was very warm and greatly astonished. He pulled out his tall ostrich aunt's tail feathers, and he caught his tall uncle the giraffe by the hind leg and dragged him through a thorn bush. He showered at his broad aunt the hippopotamus and blew bubbles into her ear when she was sleeping in the water after meals. But he never let anyone touch the cola bird, so the cola bird. At last things grew so exciting that his dear families went off, one by one in a hurry, to the banks of the great grey-green greasy Limpopo River, all set about with fever trees, to borrow new noses from the crocodile. When they come back, nobody spent anybody anymore. And ever since that day, oh best beloved, all the elephants you will e'er see, besides all those that you won't, have trunks precisely like the trunks of the satiable elephant's child. I keep 6 honest serving men. They taught me all I knew. The names of what and why and when and how and where and who. I sent them over land and sea. I sent them east and west. But after they had worked for me, I give them all a rest. I let them rest from 9 till 5, for I am busy then, as well as breakfast, lunch and tea, for they are hungry men. But different folks have different views. I know a person small. She keeps 10 million serving men who get no rest at all. She sends them abroad on her own affairs from the second she opens her eyes. 1 million hours, 2 million wares, and 7 million wires. I like that poem, that's a good one. I don't love the spirit it's delivered in. You get what it's about. It's children asking a bunch of questions you don't know the answer, sort of question. And I think that it's good for children to ask questions generally. But it's a good poem. It's got a good cadence and it's a fun little metaphor. Right then. What do we think of that one? It ran a bit long again. I think the earlier ones were better in their short brevity. For the hydrate, Nazca. I drink again. Your good health. Cheers. But yeah, I think the first 3 were better in their brevity. There's something to be said for a story that manages to be told inside an handful of words. It does a good job. It manages to do a good job with the repetition thing it does well. It echoes itself very nicely. There's certainly some run-on sentences that fit in there, like the great grey green greasy Limpopo River, or which got the banks all crowded with fever trees. They sort of stick in your head and become stock phrases. I don't know. I think it's better than the last one, but not as good as the first 3, is what I'd say. The poem is probably my favourite so far. Anyway, what are we doing then? Oh yes, let's press on. Next up we got the sing-song of Old Man Kangaroo. Not always was the kangaroo as now we do behold them, but a different animal with 4 short legs. He were grey and he were woolly, his pride were inordinate. He danced on an outcrop in the middle of Australia. He went to the little god Nukwah. He went to Nukwah at 6 before breakfast, saying, "Make me different from all the other animals by 5 this afternoon." Up jumped Nukwah from his seat on the sand flat and shouted, "Go away." He were grey and he were woolly, and his pride were inordinate. He danced on a rock ledge in the middle of Australia, and he went to the middle god, Nukwing. He went to Nukwing at 8 after breakfast, saying, "Make me different from all the other animals. Make me all so wonderfully popular by 5 this afternoon." Up jumped Nukwing from his burrow in the spinifex and shouted, "Go away." He was grey and he was woolly, and his pride were inordinate. He danced on a sandbank in the middle of Australia, and he went to the big god, Nukwong. He went to Nukwong at 10 before dinner time, saying, "Make me different from all the other animals. Make me popular and wonderfully run by 5 this afternoon." Up jumped Nukwong from his bath in the salt pan and shouted, "Yes, I will." Nukwong called Dingo, yellow dog Dingo, always hungry, dusty in the sunshine, and showed him Kangaroo. Nukwong said, "Dingo, wake up, Dingo. You see that gentleman dancing on an ash pit? He wants to be popular and very truly run after. Dingo, make him so." Up jumped Dingo, yellow dog Dingo, and said, "What, that cat rabbit?" Off ran Dingo, yellow dog Dingo, always hungry, grinning like a coal skull, run after Kangaroo. Off went the proud kangaroo on his 4 little legs like a bunny. This, oh beloved of mine, ends the first part of the tale. He ran through the desert, he ran through the mountains, he ran through the salt pans, he ran through the reed beds, he ran through the blue gums, he ran through the spinifex, he ran till his front legs ached. He had to. Still ran Dingo, yellow dog Dingo, always hungry, grinning like a rat trap, never getting nearer, never getting farther, ran after Kangaroo. He had to. Still ran Kangaroo, old man Kangaroo. He ran through tea trees, he ran through the moogla, he ran through the long grass, he ran through the short grass, he ran through the tropics of Capricorn and Cancer. He ran till his hind legs ached, he had to. Still ran Dingo, yellow dog Dingo, hungrier and hungrier, grinning like an horse collar, never getting nearer, never getting farther, and they came to Wollongong River. Now there weren't any bridge, and there weren't any ferry boat, and Kangaroo didn't know how to get over, so he stood on his legs and hopped. He had to. He hopped through the flinders, he hopped through the cinders, he hopped through the deserts in the middle of Australia. He hopped like a kangaroo. First he hopped 1 yard, then he hopped 3 yards, then he hopped 5 yards, his legs growing stronger, his legs growing longer. He hadn't any time for rest or refreshment, and he wanted them very much. Still ran Dingo, yellow dog Dingo, very much bewildered, very much hungry, and wondering what in the world or out of it made old man Kangaroo hop. For he hopped like a cricket, like a pea in a saucepan, or a new rubber ball on a nursery floor. He had to. He tucked up his front legs, he hopped on his arm legs, he stuck out his tail for a balance weight behind him, and he hopped through the downland downs. He had to. Still ran Dingo, tired dog Dingo, hungrier and hungrier, very much bewildered, and wondering when in the world or out of it would old man Kangaroo stop. Then came the Quong from his bath in the salt pans and said, "It's 5 o'clock." Down sat Dingo, poor dog Dingo, always hungry, dusty in the sunshine, hung out his tongue and howled. Down sat Kangaroo, old man Kangaroo, stuck out his tail like a milking stool behind him and said, "Thank goodness that is finished." Then said Naquong, who always is a gentleman, "Why aren't you grateful to yellow dog Dingo? Why don't you thank him for all he has done for you?" And said Kangaroo, "Tired old Kangaroo. He's chased me out of the elms in my childhood. He's chased me out of my regular meal times. He's altered my shape so I'll never get it back. And he's played old scratch from my legs." Then said Naquong, "Perhaps I am mistaken, but didn't you ask me to make you different from all the other animals, as well as to make you very truly sought after? Now it is 5 o'clock. "Yes," said Kangaroo, "I wish that I hadn't. I thought you'd do it by charms and incantations, but this is a practical joke." "Joke," said Naquong from his bath in the blue gums. "Say that again and I wish you'll have Dingo and wrang your hind legs off." "No," said the Kangaroo. "I must apologise. Legs are legs. You needn't alter them so far as I'm concerned. I only meant to explain to your lordliness that I haven't had nothing to eat since morning, and I'm very empty indeed." "Yes," said Dingo, yellow dog Dingo, "I am in the same situation. I've made him different from all other animals. But what may I have for my tea?" And said Naquong from his bath in the salt pan, "Come and ask me about it tomorrow, because I'm going to wash." So there was left in the middle of Australia, old man Kangaroo and yellow dog Dingo, and each said, "That's your fault." This is the mouthful and song of the race that were run by a boomerang, run in a single burst, only event of its kind, started by big god Naquong from the Warragabaringarumma, old man Kangaroo first, yellow dog Dingo behind. Kangaroo bounded away, his back legs working like pistons, bounded from morning till dark, 25 feet to a bound. Yellow dog Dingo lay, like a yellow cloud in the distance, much too busy to bark. But they covered the ground. Nobody knows where they went, or followed the track that they flew in. That continent had been given a name. They ran 30 degrees from Torres Straits to Leo, and look at the atlas, please. And they ran back as they came. Supposing you could try from Adelaide to the Pacific for an afternoon's run, off what these gentlemen did, you'd feel rather odd, but your legs would develop terrific. Yes, my importunate son, you'd be a marvellous kid. That was a poem at the end of the piece, and the end of our Kangaroo song, but I'm not sure how that poem went. It was meant to work. I thought I did my best, but yeah. Anyhow. That's an odd one. There's a moment right there, like the middle of that really felt like it flowed. Like from the point where it said that it was the end of the first part of the tale to when the Quong comes back into the piece. It really feels like the whole thing had a real strong rhythm to it that I was falling into, and then I sort of lost it at that point. It's a shame. It's a story that you can tell like that is a good one, at least for the telling of it. Still though, something to it. Now we come to our next one. The beginning of the armadillos. This, our best beloved, is another story of the eye in far-off times. In the very middle of those times was Stickly Prickly Hedgehog, and he lived on the banks of the turbid Amazon, eating shelly snails and things. And he had a friend, a slow solid tortoise, who lived on the banks of the turbid Amazon, eating green lettuce and things. And so that was alright, best beloved, do you see? But also, and at the same time, in those eye and far-off times, there were a painted jaguar, and he lived on the banks of the turbid Amazon too. And he ate everything that he could catch. When he could not catch deer or monkeys, he would eat frogs and beetles. When he could not catch frogs and beetles, he went to his mother jaguar, and she told him how to eat hedgehogs and tortoises. She said to him ever so many times, gracefully waving her tail, "My son, when you find a hedgehog, you must drop him into the water, and then he will uncoil and you can catch a tortoise. And when you catch a tortoise, you must scoop him out of his shell with your paw." And so that was all right, best beloved. On a beautiful night on the banks of the turbid Amazon, painted jaguar found Stickly Prickly Hedgehog and slow and solid tortoise sitting under a trunk of a fallen tree. They could not run away, and so Stickly Prickly coiled himself up into a ball, because he were an hedgehog, and was slow and solid tortoise drew his head and his feet into his shell as far as they would go, because he were a tortoise. And so that were all right, best beloved, do you see? Now attend to me, said Painted Jaguar, because this is very important. My mother said that when I meet a hedgehog I am to drop him in the water, and then he will uncoil. When I meet a tortoise I am to scoop him out of his shell with my paw. Now which of you is hedgehog and which is tortoise? Because to save my spots I can't tell. You sure what your mother told you? Said Stickly Prickly Hedgehog. You quite sure? Perhaps you said that when you uncoil a tortoise you must shell him out of the water with a scoop. When you paw an hedgehog you must drop him in the shell. Are you sure of what your mummy told you? Said Slow and Stolid Tortoise. Are you quite sure? Perhaps you said that when you water a hedgehog you must drop him into your paw. When you meet a tortoise you must shell him till he uncoils. I don't think it was like that, said the Painted Jaguar. He felt a little puzzled. But please say it again more distinctly. When you scoop water with your paw, you uncoil it with an hedgehog, said Stickly Prickly. Remember that, because it's important. But, said the tortoise, when you paw your meat, you drop it into a tortoise with a scoop. Why can't you understand? You are making my poor spots ache, said Painted Jaguar. And besides, I didn't want your advice at all. I only wanted to know which of you is hedgehog and which is tortoise. I can't tell you, said Stickly Prickly. You can skip me out of my shell if you like. Aha, said Painted Jaguar. Now I know you're tortoise. You thought I wouldn't know. Now I will. Painted Jaguar darted out his paddy paw just as Stickly Prickly curled himself up. And of course Jaguar's paddy paw were just filled with prickles. Worse than that, he knocked Stickly Prickly away and into the woods and the bushes. It were too dark to find him. Then he put his paddy paw into his mouth, and of course the prickles hurt him worse than ever. As soon as he could speak, he said, "Now I know he isn't tortoise at all, but..." And then he scratched his head with his unprickly paw. "How do I know that this other is a tortoise?" "But I am tortoise," said Slow and Stolid. "Your mother was quite right. She said that you were to scoop me out of my shell with your paw. Begin." "You didn't say that. She said that a minute ago," said Painted Jaguar, sucking the prickles out of his paddy paw. "You said she said something quite different." "Well, suppose you say that I said she said something quite different. I don't see that it makes any difference. If you said what you said, I said she said, it's just the same as if I said what she said she said. On the other hand, if you think she said that you were to uncoil me with a scoop instead of pouring me into drops with a shell, I can't help that, can I?" "But you said you wanted to be scooped out of your shell with my paw," said Painted Jaguar. "If you think again, you'll find that I didn't say anything of the kind. I said that your mother said that you were to scoop me out of my shell," said Slow and Stolid. "What will happen if I do?" said the Jaguar, most sniffly and most cautious. "I don't know, because I've never been scooped out of my shell before. But I tell you truly, if you want to see me swim away, you've only got to drop me in the water." "I don't believe it," said Painted Jaguar. You mixed up all the things my mother told me to do with the things you've asked me whether I was sure that she didn't say, till I don't know whether I'm on my head or my painted tail. Now you come and tell me something I can understand, and it makes me more mixy than before. My mother told me that I was to drop one of you two into the water, and as you seem so anxious to be dropped, I think you don't want to be dropped. So jump into the turbid Amazon and be quick about it. I'll warn you that your mummy won't be pleased. Don't tell her I didn't tell you, said Slow and Stolid. If you say another word about what my mother said, the Jaguar answered. He had not finished his sentence before Slow and Stolid quietly dived into the turbid Amazon, swam in the water for a long way, and come out on the bank where Stickly Prickly were waiting for him. "That a very narrow escape," said Stickly Prickly. "I don't like Painted Jaguar. What did you tell him that you were?" "I told him truthfully that I was a truthful tortoise, but he wouldn't believe it, and he made me jump into the river to see if I was, and he is surprised. Now he's gone to tell his mummy. Listen to him." They could hear Painted Jaguar roaring up and down among the trees and the bushes by the side of the turbid Amazon, till his mummy come. "Son, son," said his mother, ever so many times, graciously waving her tail, "what have you been doing that you shouldn't have done?" "I tried to scoop something that said it wanted to be scooped out of its shell with my paw, and my paw is full of pericles," said Painted Jaguar. "Son, son," said his mother, ever so many times, graciously waving her tail, "by the prickles in your paddy paw, I see that that must have been a hedgehog. You should have dropped him into the water." "I did that to the other thing. He said he was a tortoise, and I didn't believe him, and it was quite true. And he's dived under the turbid Amazon, and he won't come up again, and I haven't anything at all to eat. And I think we had better find lodging somewhere else. They are too clever in the turbid Amazon for poor me." "Son, son," said his mother ever so many times, graciously waving her tail. "Now attend to me and remember what I say. A hedgehog curls himself up into a ball, and its prickles stick out every way. And once, by this you may know the hedgehog." "I don't like this old lady one little bit," said Stickly Prickly, under the shadows of a large leaf. "I wonder what else she knows." "A tortoise can't curl himself up," Mother Jaguar went on, ever so many times, graciously waving her tail. "He only draws his head and legs into his shell. By this you may know the tortoise." "I don't like this old lady at all," said Slow and Solid Tortoise. "Even Painted Jaguar can't forget those directions. It's a great pity that you can't swim, Stickly Prickly." "That taught her me," said Stickly Prickly. "Just think how much better it would be if you could curl up. This is a mess. Listen to Painted Jaguar." Painted Jaguar was sitting on the banks of the turbid Amazon, sucking prickles out of his paw and saying to himself, "Can't curl but can swim. Slow Stolid, that's him. Curls up but can't swim. Stickly Prickly, that's him." "You'll never forget that in a month of Sundays," said Stickly Prickly. "Hold up my chin, Slow and Stolid. I'm going to try and learn to swim. Might be useful." "Excellent," said Slow and Stolid, and he held up Stickly Prickly's chin while Stickly Prickly kicked in the waters of the turbid Amazon. "You'll make a fine swimmer, yeah?" said Slow and Stolid. "Now, if you can unlace my back plates a little, let's see if I can do towards curling up. May be useful." Stickly Prickly helped to unlace Tortoise's back plates. So by twisting and straining, Slow and Stolid actually managed to curl up a tiddy wee bit. "Excellent," said Stickly Prickly. "I shouldn't do any more just now. It's making you black in the face. Kindly kneel in the water once again, and I'll practice that side stroke which you say is so easy." And so Stickly Prickly practiced, and Slow and Stolid swam alongside. "Excellent," said Slow and Stolid. "A little more practice will make you a regular whale. If I may trouble you to unlace my back and front plates 2 holes more, we'll try that fascinating bend that you say is so easy. Won't Painted Jaguar be so surprised?" "Excellent," said Stickly Prickly, all wet from the turbid Amazon. "I declare I shouldn't know you from one of my own family. 2 holes, I think you said. A little more expression. Please don't grunt quite so much, or Painted Jaguar may hear us. When you finish, I want to try that long dive which you say is so easy. Well, Painted Jaguar will be surprised." And so Stickly Prickly dived, and Slow and Stolid dived alongside. "Excellent," said Slow and Stolid. "A little more attention to holding your breath, and you'll be able to keep us at the bottom of the turbid Amazon. And I'll try that exercise of wrapping my hind legs around my ears, which you say is so peculiarly comfortable. And Painted Jaguar will be so surprised." Excellent, said Stickly Prickly. They're straining your back plates a little. They're overlapping now instead of lying side by side. Oh, that's the result of exercise, said Slow and Steady. I've noticed that your prickles seem to be melting into one another, and you're growing to look rather more like a pine cone and less like a chestnut bird than you used to. Am I? Said Stickly Prickly. That comes from my soaking in the water. I won't paint a jaguar, be surprised. Went on with their exercise, each opened the other, till morning come. When the sun were out, they rested and dried themselves. Then they saw that they was both of them quite different from when they had been. Stickly Prickly, said the tortoise after breakfast. I'm not what I was yesterday, but I think I might yet amuse painted jaguar. Now the very thing I was thinking just now, said Stickly Prickly. I think scales are a tremendous improvement on prickles, and say nothing of being able to swim. I won't painted jaguar be surprised. Let's go find him. By and by they found painted jaguar, still nursing his paddy paw that had been out the night before. He was so astonished that he fell 3 times backwards over his own painted tail without stopping. Good morning, said Stickly Prickly. How's your dear gracious mummy this morning? She is quite well, thank you, said painted jaguar. But you must forgive me if I do not at this precise moment recall your name. That's unkind of you, said Stickly Prickly, saying that this time yesterday you tried to scoop me out of my shell with your paw. You hadn't any shell, it was all prickles, said painted jaguar. I know it was. Just look at my paw. You told me to drop in the turbid Amazon and be drowned, said Slow and Solid. Why are you so rude and forgetful today? Don't you remember what your mother told you? Said Stickly Prickly. Can't curl but can swim, Stickly Prickly, that's him. Curls up but can't swim, Slow Solid, that's him. And they both curled themselves up and rolled around and round the painted jaguar, till his eyes turned truly cartwheels in his head. Then he went to fetch his mother. Mother, he said, there are 2 new animals in the wood today, and the one you said couldn't swim swims, and the one you said couldn't curl up curls. And they've gone shares in their prickles, I think, because both of them are scaly all over, instead of one being smooth and the other very prickly. And besides that, they are rolling round and round in circles, and I don't feel comfy. Son, son, said Mother Jaguar ever so many times, graciously waving a tail. A hedgehog is a hedgehog, it can't be anything but a hedgehog. And a tortoise is a tortoise, and can never be anything else. But it isn't a hedgehog, and it isn't a tortoise. It's a little bit of both, and I don't know its proper name. Nonsense, said Mother Jaguar. Everything has its proper name. I should call it armadillo till I found out the real one. I should leave it alone. So painted jaguar did as he was told, especially about leaving them alone. The curious thing is that from that end of this, our best beloved, no one on the banks of the turbid Amazon has ever called Stickly Prickly and Slow and Stolid anything except armadillo. There are hedgehogs and tortoises in other places, of course. There's still some in my garden. The real old and clever kind, their scales lying lippity-lappity one over the other, like pinecone scales that lived on the banks of the turbid Amazon in the iron far-off days, are always called armadillos, because they were so clever. So that's all right, dear best beloved. Do you see? I've never sailed the Amazon, I've never reached Brazil, but the Don and Magdalena, when they can go there, when they will, or so they can go there when they will. And it's lately from Southampton, great steamers white and gold, they're rolling down the Rio, roll down the Rio. And I'd like to roll the Rio, some day before I'm old. I've never seen a jaguar, nor yet an armadillo, or Dillo in his armour, and I suppose I never will. Unless I go to Rio, these wonders to behold. Roll down the Rio. Roll really down the Rio. I would love to roll the Rio some day before I'm old. And that's the end of the beginning of the armadillos. Strange, really. Despite the story being called the beginning of the armadillos, I had it straight in my head that right up until the end, that the turtle was going to become an armadillo, but that the hedgehog was going to wind his way up being a porcupine. Don't know why. Just had it in my mind that way. But they become the same creature. Not sure what to make of that one either. I think there's something to it. But again, I don't know. There's something that's gone out of them since the first three. I don't know exactly what. They're still good and they're fun. There's some good echo and phrases and the like in there, but eh? Well, I'll have another swallow of water. Anyhow, yeah. What is there to say then, eh? Well, let's press on, shall we? The next one we got is how the first letter were written. Once upon a most early time, were a Neolithic man. He were not a Jew, or an Anglo, or even a Dravidian, which he might well have been, best beloved, but ne'er mind well. He were a primitive, and he lived cavily in a cave, and he wore very few clothes, and he couldn't read and he couldn't write, and he didn't want to, and except when he were hungry he were quite happy. His name was Tegumai Bopsula, and that means man who does not put his foot forward in a hurry. But we, our best beloved, will call him Tegumai for short. His wife's name was Teshumar Dewindra, and that means ladies who ask her very many questions. But we, our best beloved, will call her Teshumar for short. And that means small person without any manners who ought to be spanked. But I'm going to call her, oh no, sorry, for short. And his little girl daughter's name was Tafil Metalumar, and that means small person without any manners who ought to be spanked. But I'm going to call her Taffy. And she was Tegumai Bopsula's best beloved, and her own mummy's best beloved. And she were not spanked half so much as she were good for, as were good for her. They was all three very happy. As soon as Taffy could run around, she went everywhere with her daddy Tegumai, and sometimes they would not come home to the cave till they were hungry. And then Teshumar to Windra would say, "Where in the world have you two been to get so shocking dirty? Really, my Tegumai, you're no better than my Taffy. Now, attend and listen." One day, Tegumai Bopsala went down through the beaver swamp to the Wagar River, a spear cart fished for dinner. And Tally went too. Tegumai's spear were made of wood, with shark's teeth in the end. And before he had caught any fish at all, he accidentally broke it clean across by jabbing it down too hard on the bottom of the river. It was miles and miles from home. Of course they had their lunch with them in a little bag, and Tegumai had forgotten to bring any extra spears. "Here's a pretty kettle of fish," said Tegumai. "It'll take me half the day to mend this." "Here's your big black spear at home," said Taffy. "Let me run back to the cave and ask Mummy to give it me." "It's too far for your little fat legs," said Tegumai. "Besides, you might fall into the beaver swamp and be drowned. You must make the best of a bad job." He sat down and took out a little leather mendy bag full of reindeer sinews and strips of leather and lumps of beeswax and resin, and began to mend the spear. Taffy sat down too, with her toes in the water and her chin in her hand, and thought very hard. And she said, "I say, Daddy, it's an awful nuisance that you and I don't know how to write, isn't it? If we did, we could send a message for the new spear." "Taffy," said Tegumai, "often have I told you not to use slang. Awful isn't a pretty word. It would be a convenience, now you mention it, if we could write home." Just then, a stranger man come along the river. He belonged to a far tribe, the Tewaras, and he did not understand one word of Tegumai's language. He stood on the bank and smiled at Taffy, because he had a little girl daughter of his own at home. Tegumai drew an anchor deer sinews from his mendy bag and began to mend the spear. "Come here," said Taffy. "Do you know where my mummy lives?" And the stranger man said, being as you know, a Tawara." "Silly," said Taffy, and she stamped her foot because she saw a shoal of very big carp going up the river, just when her daddy couldn't use his spear. "Don't bother grown-ups," said Tegumai, so busy with his spear mending that he did not turn around. "I aren't," said Taffy. "I only want him to do what I want him to do, and he won't understand." "And don't bother me," said Tegumai, and he went on pulling and straining at the deer sinews with his mouth full of loose ends. The stranger man, a genuine Tawara he was, sat down on the grass, and Taffy showed him what her daddy was doing. The stranger man thought, This is a very wonderful child. She stamps her foot at me and she makes faces. She must be the daughter of that noble chief who was so great that he won't take any notice of me. So he smiled more politely than ever. Now, said Daffy, I want you to go to my mummy, because your legs are longer than mine and you won't fall into the beaver swamp, and ask for Daddy's other spear, the one with the black handle that hangs over our fireplace. A stranger man, and he were a Tawara, thought, this is a very, very wonderful child. She waves her arms and she shouts at me, but I don't understand a word of what she says. But if I don't know what she wants, I fear that the haughty chief man who turns his back on callers will be angry. He got up and twisted a big flat piece of bark off a birch tree and gave it to Taffy. He did this, best beloved, to show that his art were as white as the birch bark, and he meant no harm. But Taffy didn't quite understand. Oh, she said, now I see. But my mummy's living address. Of course I can't write, but I can draw pictures if I've anything to scratch with. Please lend me that shark's tooth off your necklace. The stranger man, and he were a Tawara, didn't say anything, so Taffy put up her little hand and pulled at the beautiful bead and seed and shark tooth necklace round his neck. The stranger man, and he were a Tawara, thought, this is a very, very, very wonderful child. The shark's tooth on my necklace is a magic shark's tooth, and I was always told that if anybody touched it without my leave, it would immediately swell up or burst. This child doesn't swell up or burst. That important chief man, who attends strictly to his business, who has not yet taken any notice of me at all, doesn't seem to be afraid that she will swell up or burst. I had better be more polite. So he gave Taffy the shark's tooth, and she lay down flat on her tummy, with her great legs in the air, like some people on the drawing room floor when they want to draw pictures. And she said, now I'll draw you some beautiful pictures. You can look over my shoulder, but you mustn't joggle. First I'll draw Daddy fishing. Isn't really very like him, but Mummy will know, because I've drawn his spear all broken. Now I'll draw the other spear that he wants, the black-handled spear. It looks as if it was sticking in Daddy's back, that's because the shark's tooth slipped, and this piece of bark isn't big enough. That's the spear I want you to fetch, so I'll draw a picture of me and myself explaining it to you. My head doesn't stand up like I've drawn, but it's easier to draw that way. Now I'll draw you. I think you're very nice, really. But I can't make you pretty in the picture, so you mustn't be offended. Are you offended? The stranger man, and he was a Tawara, smiled. He thought, there must be a big battle going on, to be fought somewhere, and this extraordinary child, who takes my magic shark tooth, but who does not swell up or burst, is telling me to call all the great chief's tribe to help him. He is a great chief, or he would have noticed me. Look, said Daffy, drawn very hard and rather scratchily. Now I've drawn you, and I've put the spear that Daddy wants into your hand, just to remind you that you're to bring it. Now I'll show you how to find Mummy's living address. You go along till you come to the 2 trees, those are the trees. Then you go over a hill, that's a hill. And then you come into a beaver swamp, all full of beavers. I haven't put in all the beavers because I can't draw beavers, but I've drawn their heads, and that's all you'll see of them when you cross the swamp. Mind you don't fall in. And then our cave is just beyond the beaver swamp. It isn't as high as the hills really, but I can't draw things very small. That's my mummy outside. She is beautiful. She's the most beautifulest mummy there ever was, but she won't be offended when she sees I've drawn her so plain. She'll be pleased with me because I can draw. Now, in case you forgot, I'll draw the spoor that Daddy wants outside our cave. It's inside, really. You show the picture to my mummy and she'll give it to you. I made her holding up her hand because I know she'll be so pleased to see you. Isn't it a beautiful picture? There, do you quite understand, or shall I explain again? The stranger man, and he was a Tawara, looked at the picture and nodded very hard. He said to himself, if I do not fetch this great chief's tribe to help him, he will be slain by his enemies, who are coming up on all sides with spears. Now I see why the great chief pretended not to notice me. He feared that his enemies were hiding in the bushes and would see him deliver a message to me. Therefore he turned his back and let the wise and wonderful child draw the terrible picture showing me his difficulties. I will away and get help for him from his tribe. He did not even ask Taffy the road. He raced off into the bushes like the wind, with the birch bark back in his hand. And Taffy sat down most pleased. Now this is the picture that Taffy had drawn for him. There is a picture here of quite a childish rendition of the described scene on a piece of birch bark, which again I can't show to you. Didn't realise this was a picture book. What have you been doing, Taffy? Said Tegomar. He had mended his spear and was carefully waving it to and fro. It's a little barragement of my own, Daddy dear, said Taffy. If you won't ask me questions, you know all about it in a little time, and you'll be surprised. You don't know how surprised you'll be, Daddy. Promise you'll be surprised. Very well, said Dagomar, and he went on fishing. The stranger man, did you know he was a Tawara? I went away with the picture and ran for some miles, till, quite by accident, he found Teshumar, Terrawindra, at the door of her cave, talking to some other Neolithic ladies who had come in to a primitive lunch. Taffy were very like Teshumar, especially about the upper part of the face and eyes. So the stranger man, always a pure Tawara, smiled politely and handed Teshumar the birch bark. He'd run hard, so he panted, and his legs were scratched with brambles, but he still tried to be polite. As soon as Teshumar saw the picture, she screamed like anything and flew at the stranger man. The other Neolithic ladies at once knocked him down and sat on him in a long line of 6, while Teshumar pulled his hair. It's as plain as the nose on this stranger man's face, she said. You stuck my Tegomai all full of spears and frightened poor Taffy, so their hair stands all on end. And now not content with that, he brings me a horrid picture of how it was done. Look! She showed the picture to all the Neolithic ladies, sitting patiently on the stranger man. Here is my Tegomai with his arms broken. Here is a spear sticking in his back. Here is a man with a spear ready to throw. Here, another man throwing a spear from a cave. And here are a whole pack of people. They were Taffy's beavers, really, but they did look rather like people, coming up behind Tegomai. Isn't it shocking? Most shocking, said the Neolithic ladies. And they filled the stranger man's hair with mud, at which he was surprised, and they beat upon the reverberating tribal drums, and called together all the chiefs of the tribe of Tegomai, with their Etmans and Dolmans and Neguses, Woons and Akuns of the organisation, in addition to the warlocks, Angkoks, the Juju men, Bonses, and the rest who decided that before they had chopped the stranger man's head off, he should instantly lead them down to the river and show them where he had hidden poor Taffy. By this time the stranger man, in spite of being a Tawara, were really annoyed. They filled his hair quite solid with mud, and rolled him up and down on knobbly pebbles, and had sat him a long line of 6. They had thumped him and bumped him till he could hardly breathe. And though he did not understand their language, he was almost sure that the names the Neolithic ladies called him was not ladylike. However, he said nothing at all till the tribe of Tegomai were assembled. Then he led them back to the banks of the Wagar River. And there they found Taffy making daisy chains, and Tegomai carefully spearing small carp with his mended spear. Well, you have been quick, said Taffy. Why did you bring so many people? Daddy dear, this is my surprise. Are you surprised, Daddy? Very, said Tegomai. It's ruined all my fishing for the day. Why, the old dear, calm, nice, clean, quiet, tug-up tribe is here, Taffy. And so they were. First of all, Teshumar Terrawindra and the Neolithic ladies, tightly holding on to the strange man, whose hair was full of mud, although he were Tawara. Behind them come the head chief, the vice chief, the deputy and assistant chiefs, all armed to the upper teeth. The Etmans, the heads of hundreds, Platoths with their platoons, the Dolmans with their detachments, Woons, Neguses, Akuns, ranking on in the rear, still armed to the teeth. Behind them were the tribe and hierarchical order, from owners of 4 cakes, 1 for each season, a private raid near run and 2 salmon leaps, the feudal and prognathous civilians, semi-entitled to half a bearskin of winter nights, 7 yards from the fire, and adscript serfs holding the reversion of a scraped marrowbone under Ariat. Aren't those beautiful words, best beloved? It was all there, prancing and shouting, and they frightened every fish for 20 miles. And Tegomai thanked them in fluid Neolithic oration. And Teshumar Terrawindra run down and kissed and hugged Taffy very much indeed. The head chief of the tribe, Tegomai, took Tegomai by the top-knot feathers and shook him severely. Explain, 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 cried all the tribe of Tegomai. Goodness sakes alive, cried Tegomai. Let go of my top-knot. Can't a man break his carp spear without the old country descending on him? You're a very interfering people. I don't believe you brought my daddy's black-handled spear after all, said Daffy. What are you doing to my nice stranger man? There was thumping him by 2s and 3s and 10s, till his eyes turned round and round. He could only grasp and point at Taffy. Where are the bad people who speared you, my darling? Said Teshumar Terrawindra. There weren't any, said Tegomai. My only visitors this morning were the poor fellow that you're trying to choke. Aren't you well, or are you ill, O tribe of Tegomai? He came with a horrible picture, said the old chief. A picture that showed you were full of spears. Perhaps I'd better explain that I gave him the picture, said Daffy. But she did not feel quite comfy. You, said the tribe of Tegama all together. Small person with no manners who ought to be spanked. You. Taffy, dear, I'm afraid we're in for a little trouble, said her daddy. Put his arm round her so she didn't care. Explain, 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 said the head chief of the tribe of Tegama, and he hopped on one foot. I wanted the strange man to fetch Daddy's spear, so I drawed it, said Taffy. There wasn't lots of spears, there was only one spear. I drawed it 3 times to make sure. I couldn't help it looking as if it stuck in Daddy's head. There wasn't room on the birch bark. Those things that Mummy called bad people are my beavers. I drawed them to show him the way through the swamp, and I drawed Mummy at the mouth of the cave, looking pleased because it is a nice stranger man, and I think you are just the stupidest people in the world, said Taffy. He's a very nice man. Why have you filled his hair with mud? Wash him. Nobody said anything at all for a long time, till the head chief laughed, and the stranger man, who were at least a Tawara, laughed, and Tegama laughed till he fell down flat on the bank, and all the tribe laughed more and worse and louder. The only people who did not laugh were Teshuma, Tewindra, and all the Neolithic ladies. They was very polite to all their husbands and said idiot every so often. The head chief of the tribe of Tegama cried and sang, "O small person without any manners who ought to be spanked, you've hit upon a great invention." I didn't intend to. I only wanted Daddy's black-handled spear, said Taffy. Never mind, it is a great invention, and some day men will call it writing. At present it is only pictures, and as we have seen today, pictures are not always properly understood. But a time will come, O babe of Tegumai, when we shall make letters, all 26 of them, and we shall be able to read as well as to write, and then we shall always say exactly what we mean without any mistake. Let the Neolithic ladies wash the mud out of the stranger's hair. I should be glad of that, said Taffy. So after all, though you've brought every single other spear in the tribe of Tegama, you've forgotten my daddy's black-handled spear. And the head chief cried and said and sang, Taffy dear, the next time you write a picture letter, you'd better send a man who can talk our language with it, to explain what it means. I don't mind it myself because I am head chief, but it's very bad for the rest of the tribe of Tegama, and, as you can see, it surprises the stranger. Then they adopted the stranger man, a genuine Tawara of Tawar, into the tribe of Tegama, because he were a gentleman who did not make a fuss about the mud the Neolithic ladies had put in his hair. But from that day to this, I suppose it is all Taffy's fault, very few little girls have ever liked learning to read or write. Most of them prefer to draw pictures and play about with their daddies, just like Taffy. There runs a road by Merrow Down, a grassy tract today is, an hour out of Guildford town, above the river way it is. Here when they heard the horse bells ring, the ancient Britons dressed and rode, to watch the dark Phoenicians bring their goods along the western road. And here or hereabouts they met, to hold their racial talks as such, to barter beads for Whitby jet, and tin for gay shells talks and such. But long and long before this time, when Bison used to rhyme on it, did Taffy and her daddy climb that down and had their home on it. Then beavers built in Broadstone Brook, and made a swamp where Bramley stands, and bears from Share would come and look for Taffy Mile where Shamley stands. The way that Taffy called Wagai was more than 6 times bigger then, and all the tribe of Tegumai, they cut a noble figure then. That's the end of how the first letter were written. I'm a little torn about that one. I don't think it was as good a story as even some of the ones after the first 3 that I've been holding up so high. But again, this is a storybook written for a child, I think a daughter, and I mean you can tell that one was for a child, can't you? Really strong with that. So let me have a swallow of water, shall I? I'm gonna press on. I've decided we're going to finish this tonight, which will probably take about another hour or so. So we'll press on directly. I mean to do so. Next up we've got how the alphabet were made. The week after Tef met Alami, we will still call her Taffy, best beloved, made that little mistake about her daddy's spear and the stranger man and the picture letters all, she went carp fishing again with her daddy. Her mummy wanted her to stay at home and help hang up hides to dry on the big drying poles outside their Neolithic cave. But Daffy slipped away down to her daddy quite early, and they fished. Presently she began to giggle, and her daddy said, "Don't be silly, child." "Wasn't it inciting?" said Daffy. "Don't you remember how the head chief puffed out his cheeks and how funny the nice stranger man looked, with the mud in his hair?" "Well, do I," said Tegama. "I had to pay 2 deerskins, soft ones with fringes, to the stranger man for the things we did to him." "We didn't do anything," said Daffy. "It was Mummy and the other Neolithic ladies, in the mud." Daffy took a marrow bone and sat mousy quiet for 10 whole minutes, while her daddy scratched on pieces of birch bark with a shark's tooth. And she said, "Daddy, I've think of a secret surprise. You make a noise, any sort of noise." "Ah," said Tegama. "That'll do to begin with." "Yes," said Daffy. "You look just like a carpfish with its mouth open. Say it again, please." "Ah, ah, ah," said her daddy. "Don't be rude, daughter." "I'm not reading rude, Daddy, truly," said Daffy. "It's part of my secret surprise. My secret surprise, think. Do say ah, Daddy, and keep your mouth open at the end. And lend me the tooth. I'm going to draw a carpfish's mouth wide open." "What for?" said her daddy. "Don't you see?" said Daffy, scratching on the bark. "That would be our little secret surprise. When I draw a carpfish with his mouth open, and the smoke at the back of our cave, if Mummy doesn't mind, it reminds you of the owl noise. Then we can play that it was me jumped out of the dark and surprised you with that noise, same as I did in the beaver swamp last winter." "Really?" said her daddy, in the voice that grown-ups use when they are truly attended. "Go on, Daffy." "Oh, bother," she said. "I can't draw all of a carpfish, but I can draw something that means carpfish mouth. You know how they stand on their heads, rooting in the mud? Well, he's a pretense carpfish, or we can play with the rest. We can play that the rest of him is drawn. And here's just his mouth, and that means R. And she drew this. There are diagrams for this chapter, Lord. I think the old, this is, oh Lord, this is the old alphabet, and the old thing is drawn in individual things, and I don't think I can tell you this story. I don't think it really works without, because they're all just the evolution of letters coming together in different ways. Oh Lord. Yeah. It's a cute story. It's about the invention of writing, and it's like figuring out how basic Neolithic pictograms sort of become letters. It's interesting and it's clever, but it's very, very reliant on illustrations. I just can't tell this story. I'm going to have to come back to this book sometime after I get something set up so I can read it to you. Yeah. Let me look through the rest of these and see if any more of them require looking at pictures. But okay, none of the rest of them. Yeah, none of the rest of them have pictures that are part of the story. So we'll stick. That's annoying. I feel bad about that. Alright. Yeah. We'll come back to that story another day. But and we won't start the next one now because the ad's about to come on. But yeah, sorry about that. I should have looked this book over a bit more carefully before I started it, but I just thought it was a book. Didn't really think, well, yeah. Egg on my face, I've been meaning to get some sort of way to show more images in here anyway. Something Tanner mentioned while we were hanging out on another stream, I think it was Blake. He mentioned that he was, they had something happening. He mentioned that there was a couple of paintings he was particularly interested in regarding Dante's Inferno. And there have been a few other books that have had images in them that are, notable paintings. Nothing so bad as this one, but and some of the other ones have had illustrations, like some of, well, in fact, a lot of the London ones have had illustrations in them that I haven't been able to show off. It occurs to me now that it would be a good thing to have the capacity to do that in some fashion or other. I don't know. I mean, I keep coming to the shelf to read these things because, that's the easiest place to get it. But I guess I could set myself up a little reading room. Some sort of a place with a setup thing to show images. Don't know really, I haven't, I'll have to give it some thought. But, yeah. Anyhow, I don't know really. I'm not sure about these stories. I think they're generally good, but I just don't know. I almost want to leave them there. I'm a little bit disappointed about that one, but there's not really enough of them left to make for another worthwhile stream on their own. There's only probably about 40 minutes left, given that we lost that one. So I expect what I'll do is I'll finish them off here, and then we'll, I don't know, I'll have to give it some thought. Maybe we won't come back to them for a while. I just don't know. It feels unfair to them, you know what I mean? Like, the stories is good, it's just I don't have the capacity to show them off.
Oh, right.
Hey Tanner, welcome in. Oh, well, I'm saying welcome in, but I know you sometimes just redeem late in the stream. But given that I was just talking at you about, yeah, I suppose it might be either of them. Yeah. But the thing is that, I don't know, what probably I should have done is looked at this book, or looked through this book before I started, and,
Oh, the rat.
Hey, a what? Welcome to the both of you. You're just coming in about 2 hours into, assuming you're coming in, we're just coming into about 2 hours into Just So Stories, where I'm discovering that I don't really have the capacity to show off a lot of them because they rely on images a lot more than other ones. They don't rely on them, but they have like images which have little bits of the story that are extra. And the last one that I was about to read before the break just had images you needed for reading the old stories. Hmm? Why are you sorry? You're not in trouble. What you got? I don't know why you're saying sorry for. I appreciate you being there, my man. That's fine. Life happens. You guys showed up. It's more than most people. But heck, I think, what have we had, 6 people talking in chat? So that puts you above some 8 billion and change other people by showing up at all. Look at that. Yeah. I do appreciate you being there. No problem for being late. Fair enough, thank you kindly, Tanner. Nostrovia, the year elf. Yours and mine's. Yeah, that's the attitude. Besides, you've earned your bones as far as I'm concerned, Tanner. You got that little diamond by your name. You've been here, you put in the hours. Same with Wild, same with all of you. I can't complain at all. But yeah, what was I saying? But yeah, Kipling's Just So Stories unfortunately require a bit more image than I can do for a lot of them, so we'll have to come back another time. I was just talking, Tanner, about the discussion we had the other day where you mentioned your interest in Dante's Inferno and several of the art pieces that accompanied it. And I do need to set up some sort of image thing for these. And probably in the future, if I'm worried about it, I'll have to look through and see if there's illustrations ahead of time. Which, yeah, I don't know. That could be fun. Like, I think this would be a good book to go through if I'd taken the time to get pictures of the illustrations and like had a little screen I could display them on. I think at some point I am going to have to come back to this one and do that proper. And it'd be good to go back through some of the other ones as well, because some of them have had illustrations. Not most of them, but some of the Londons and a few others. So that's something for a future project. I've been setting up new shelves across the way because Lamp is worried about running out of space. So I think when I get them set up, I'll figure something out where I can show off images in a little... Because I won't need my little bedroom over there because I've got a bedroom. So I'll set up a little reading nook over there. We'll have a little place with some sort of... I don't know how screens are protected as well. I'll bully Lamp into something and we'll figure it out. And yeah, and then we have books with illustrations like this we can take full advantage. And when we have books that have an interest in history or art piece attached to them, maybe I can do a little bit of research and yeah, we can do something like that. That'd be good. But for the time being, we can't do any of that. We are constrained by our real, the material existence of our life. What is, and we can only move on with it, with apologies to Rudyard Kipling. So, we'll press on with the rest of these, which have illustrations, but don't require you to be able to see the illustrations for the story to work. And there should be about 40 more minutes of it. And then once that is done, we'll press on. We'll revisit the idea at some other time. But For those of you who have just joined us, I say those of you like there's a big group for Wild and Tanner, and we've been reading Rudyard Kipling's Just So stories, which were bedtime stories he wrote for his daughter, and which are mostly animal themed. They're not always. And we're, I think there's 2 or 3 more left to go, so probably 40 more minutes. But yeah, I do hope you're comfortable and get yourself settled. And that being the case, we will resume. The Crab That Played with the Sea. Before the high and far off times, oh my best beloved, came the time of the very beginnings. And that were in the days when the eldest magician was getting things ready. First he got the earth ready, then he got the sea ready, and then he told all the animals that they could come out and play. And the animals said, "Oh, eldest magician, what shall we play at?" And he said, "I will show you." He took the elephant, all the elephant that there was, and said, "Play at being an elephant." And all the elephant there were played. He took the beaver, all the beaver there were, and said, "Play at being a beaver." And all the beaver there were played. He took the cow, all the cow there were, and said, "Play at being a cow." And all the cow there were played. He took the turtle, all the turtle there were, and said, "Play at being a turtle." And all the turtle there were played. One by one he took all the beasts and birds and fishes, and told them what to play at. But towards evening, when people and things grow restless and tired, there come up the man with his own little girl daughter. Yes, with his own best beloved little girl daughter, sitting upon his shoulder. And he said, "What is this play, eldest magician?" And the eldest magician said, "Oh, son of Adam, this is the play of the very beginning. You are too wise for this play." And the man saluted and said, "Yep, I'm too wise for this play. But see that you make all the animals obedient to me." Now, while the two were talking together, Pauama, the crab, who were next in the game, started off sideways and stepped into the sea, saying to himself, "I will play my play alone in the deep waters, and I will never be obedient to this son of Adam." Nobody saw him go away, except the little girl daughter, while she leaned on the man's shoulder. And the play went on, till there were no more animals left without orders, and the eldest magician wiped the fine dust off his hands and walked about the world, to see how the animals was playing. He went north, best beloved. He found all the elephants there were, digging at with his tusks and stamping with his feet in the nice new clean earth that had been made ready for him. "Can't?" said all the elephant there were, meaning, "Is this right?" "Biakan," to the eldest magician, meaning, "That is quite right." And he breathed upon the great rocks and lumps of earth that all the elephant there were had thrown up, and they become the great Himalayan mountains, and he can look them out on the map. He went east and found all the cow there were feeding the field that had been just made ready for her, and she licked her tongue round an whole forest at a time and swallowed it all, and sat down to chew her cud. "Gone," said all the cow that were. "Biakan," said the eldest magician, and he breathed upon the bare patch where she had eaten, and upon the place where she had sat down, and one became the great Indian desert, and the other became the desert of the Sahara, and you can look them out on the map. He went west, and he found all the beaver there was, making a beaver dam across the mouths of broad rivers that had been got ready for them. "Come," said all the beaver there was. "Biakan," said the eldest magician, and he breathed upon the fallen trees and the still water, and they became the Everglades in Florida, and you may look them out on the map. Then he went south, and found all the turtle there were, scratching with his flippers in the sand that had been got ready for him, and the sand and the rocks whirled through the air and fell far off into the sea. "Come," said all the turtle there were. "Biakan," said the eldest magician, and he breathed upon the sand and the rocks where they had fallen in the sea, and they became the most beautiful islands of Borneo, Celebes, Sumatra, Java, and the rest of the Malay archipelago, and you could look them out on the map. By and by the eldest magician met the man on the banks of the Perak River. He said, "Oh, son of Adam, are all the animals obedient to you?" "Yep," said the man. "Is all the earth obedient to you?" "Yep," said the man. "Is all the sea obedient to you?" "No," said the man. "Once a day and once a night the sea runs up the Peak River and drives the sweet water back into the forest, so that my house is made wet. Once a day and once a night it runs down the river and draws all the water after it, so there is nothing left but mud, and my canoe is upset. Is that the play you told her to play? No, said the eldest magician. That is a new and a bad play. Look, said the man as he spoke. And as he spoke, the great sea came up the mouth of the Parrot River, driving the river backwards till it overflowed all the dark forest for miles and miles, and flooded the man's house. This is wrong. Launch your canoe and we will find out who is playing with the sea, said the eldest magician. They stepped into the canoe, the little girl daughter come with them. The man took his kris, a curving wavy dagger with a blade like flame. And they pushed out on the Parrot River, and the sea began to run back, and the canoe was sucked out of the mouth of the Parrot River, past Selangor, past Malacca, past Singapore, out and out, to the island of Bintang, as though it had been pulled by a string. Then the eldest magician stood up and shouted, "Oh, beasts and birds and fishes that I took between my hands at the very beginning, and taught the play that you should play, which of you is playing with the sea?" Then all the beasts, birds and fishes said together, "Eldest magician, we play the plays you taught us to play, we and our children's children, but not one of us plays with the sea." Then the moon rose high and full over the water, and the eldest magician said to the hunchbacked old man who sits in the moon spinning a fishing line, with which he hopes one day to catch the world, "Oh, fisher of the moon, are you playing with the sea?" "No," said the fisherman, "I am spinning a line with which I shall someday catch the world, but I do not play with the sea." And he went on spinning his line. Now, there is also a rat up in the moon, who always bites the old fisherman's line as fast as it is made. He's my cousin, I think third time cousin. No, that guy, good guy. There is a rat up on the moon who always bites the old fisherman's line as fast as it is made. And the eldest magician said to him, "Oh, rat of the moon, are you playing with the sea?" And the rat said, "Are you joking? I'm too busy biting for the line the old fisherman spin. I don't pay with the sea." And he went on biting the line. And the little girl daughter put up her little soft brown arms with the beautiful white shell bracelets and said, "Oh, eldest magician, when my father here talked to you at the very beginning, and I leaned upon his shoulder while the beasts were being taught their plays, one beast went away naughtily into the sea before you had taught him his play." And the eldest magician said, "How wise little children are, who see and are silent. What was that beast like?" And the little girl daughter said, "He was round and he was flat, and his eyes grew up on stalks, and he walked sideways like this, and he was covered with strong armour upon his back." And the eldest magician said, "How wise are little children who speak truth. Now I know where Pao Amu went. Give me the paddle." So he took the paddle, but there was no need to paddle, for the water flowed steadily past all the islands. They come to the place called Pusat Tasek, the Art of the Sea, where the great hollow is that leads down to the art of the world. And in that hollow grows the wonderful tree, Bois Jengi, that bears the magic twin nuts. Then the eldest magician stood his arm up to the shoulder through the deep warm water, and under the roots of the wonderful tree he touched the broad back of Pao Amu the crab. And Pao Amu settled down at the touch, and all the sea rose up as waters rise in a basin when you put your hand in it. "Ah," said the elder magician, "now I know who has been playing with the sea." And he called out, "What are you doing, Pao Amu?" And Pao Amu, deep down, answered, "Once a day and once a night I go and look for my food. Once a day and once a night I return. Leave me alone." And the eldest magician said, "Listen, Pao Amu. When you go out from your cave, the waters of the sea pour down into Pusat Tasek, and all the beaches of the island are left bare, and the little fish die. And Raja Moyan Kaban, the king of elephants, his legs are made muddy. When you come back and sit in Pusat Tasek, the waters of the sea rise, and half the little islands are drowned, and the man's house is flooded, and the Raja Abdullah, the king of the crocodiles, his mouth is filled with salt water." And Pao Amu, deep down below, laughed and said, "I did not know I was so important. Henceforth I will go out 7 times a day, and the waters shall never be still." And the eldest magician said, I cannot make you play the play you were meant to play, Bahama, because you escaped me at the very beginning. But if you are not afraid, come up and we will talk about it. I'm not afraid, said Bahama, and he rose to the top of the sea in the moonlight. There was nobody in the world so big as Bahama, for he was the king crab of all crabs. Not a common crab, but a king crab. One side of his great shell touched the beach at Sarawak, the other touched the beach at Pahang, and he was taller than the smoke of 3 volcanoes. As he rose up through the branches of the wonderful tree, he tore off one of the great twin fruits, the magic double kerneled nuts that make people young. And the little girl daughter saw it bobbing alongside the canoe, and pulled it in and began to pick out the soft eyes with her little golden scissors. Now, said the magician, make a magic, Powhammer, to show that you are really important. Powhammer rolled his eyes and waved his legs. He could only stir up the sea, because though he were king crab, he were nothing more than a crab, and the eldest magician laughed. You are not so important after all, Powhammer, he said. Now let me try. And he made a magic with his left hand, with just a little finger of his left hand. And lo and behold, best beloved Powhammer's hard, blue-green-black shell fell off him, as an husk falls off a coconut. And Powhammer were left all soft, soft as the little crabs that you sometimes find on the beach, best beloved. Indeed, you are very important, said the eldest magician. Shall I ask the man here to cut you with his kriss? Shall I send for Raja Moyan Kaban, the king of the elephants, to pierce you with his tusks? Or shall I call Raja Abdullah, the king of the crocodiles, to bite you? And Powhammer said, I am ashamed. Give me back my hard shell and let me go back to Pusat Tasek. I will only stir out once a day and once a night to get my food. The elder magician said, No, Powhammer, I will not give you back your shell, for you will grow bigger and prouder and stronger, and perhaps you will forget your promise, and you will play with the sesame once more. Then Powhammer said, What shall I do? I'm so big that I can only hide in Pusat Tasek. If I go anywhere else so soft as I am now, the sharks and the dogfish will eat me. If I go to Pusat Tasek, all soft as I am now, though I may be safe, I can never stir out to get my food, and so I shall die. Then he waved his legs and lamented. Listen, Powhammer, said the eldest magician. I cannot make you play the play you were meant to play, because you escaped me at the very beginning. But if you choose, I can make every stone and every hole and every bunch of weed in all the seas a safe Pusat Tasek for you and your children for always. Then Powhammer said, That is good, but I do not choose yet. Look, there is that man who talked to you at the very beginning. If he had not taken up your attention, I should not have grown tired of waiting and run away, and all this would never have happened. What will he do for me? The man said, If you choose, I'll make a magic, so that both the deep water and the dry ground will be open for you and your children. So you shall be able to hide both on the land and the sea. And Powhammer said, I do not choose yet. Look, there is that girl who saw me running away at the very beginning. If she had spoken then, the eldest magician would have called me back, and all this would never have happened. What will she do for me? And the little girl daughter said, This is a good nut that I'm eating. If you choose, I'll make a magic, and I will give you this pair of scissors, very sharp and strong, so that you and your children can eat coconuts like this all day long when you come up from sea to the land. Or you can dig a Pusat Tasek for yourself with the scissors that belong to you, and there is no stone or hole nearby. When the earth is too hard, by help of these same scissors you can run up a tree. And Powhammer said, I do not choose yet, for all soft as I am, these gifts would not help me. Give me back my shell, O eldest magician, and then I will play you a play. And the eldest magician said, I will give it back, Powhammer, for 11 months of the year, but on the 12th month of every year it shall grow soft again, to remind you and all your children that I can make magics, to keep you humble, Powhammer. For I see that you can run both under the water and on land. You will grow too bold. And if you can climb trees and crack nuts and dig holes with your scissors, you will grow too greedy, Powhammer. Then Powhammer thought a little and said, I've made my choice. I'll take all the gifts. And the eldest magician made a magic with the right hand, with all 5 fingers of his right hand. And lo and behold, best beloved Powhammer grew smaller and smaller and smaller, till at last there were only a little green crab swimming in the water alongside the canoe, crying in a very small voice, "Give me the scissors!" And the girl-daughter picked him up on the palm of her little brown hand, and sat him on the bottom of the canoe, and gave him the scissors. And he waved them in his little arms, and opened them and shut them, and snapped them, and said, "I can eat nuts, I can crack shells, I can dig holes, I can climb trees, I can breathe in the dry air, and I can find a safe place to sec under every stone. I did not know I was so important. Come, is this right?" "Yeah, Kun," said the elder magician. And he laughed and gave him his blessing. And little Powhammer scuttled over the side of the canoe into the water. He was so tiny that he could have hidden under the shadow of a dry leaf on land, with a dead shell at the bottom of a sea. "Was that well done?" said the eldest magician. "Yeah," said the man. "But now I must go back to Perak, and that is a weary way to paddle. We had waited till Powhammer had gone out of Pusat to Sec and come home. The water would have carried us there by itself." "You are lazy," said the eldest magician. "So your children shall be lazy. They shall be the laziest people in the world. They shall be called the Malazy, the lazy people." And he held up his finger to the moon and said, "O fisherman, here is this man who is too lazy to row home. Pull his canoe home with your lion, fisherman." Nah, said the man. "If I'm to be lazy on my days, let the sea work for me twice a day forever. That'll save paddling." And the eldest magician laughed and said, "Dayakan, that is right." And the rat of the moon stopped his biting the line, and the fisherman let his line down till it touched the sea. And he pulled the old deep sea along, past the island of Bedtime, past Singapore, past Malacca, past Selangor, till the canoe whirled at the mouth of the Perak River again. "Kun," said the fisherman of the moon. "Bayakun," said the eldest magician. "See now that you pull the sea twice a day and twice a night forever, so that the Malazy fisherman may be safe paddling. Be careful not to do it too hard, or I shall make a magic on you as I did to Powhammer." They all went up the Perak River and went to bed, best beloved. Now listen and attend. From that day to this, the moon has always pulled the sea up and down, and made what we call the tides. Sometimes the fish through the sea pulls a little too hard, then we get spring tides. Sometimes it pulls a little too softly, then we get what are called neap tides. But nearly always he's careful, because the eldest magician. And Powhammer, you can see when you go to the beach how all Powhammer's babies make little Pusat to Secs for themselves, under every stone and bunch of weeds on the sand. You can see them waving their little scissors, and, in some parts of the world, they truly live on the dry land and run up the palm trees and eat coconuts, exactly as the girl-daughter promised. But once a year all Powhammers must shake off their hard armour and be soft, to remind them of what the eldest magician could do. And so it isn't fair to kill or hug Powhammer babies, just because old Powhammer was stupidly rude a very long time ago. Oh yes, and Powhammer's babies hate being taken out of their little Pusat to Secs and brought home in pickle bottles. That's why they nip you with their scissors, and it serves you right. And then, oh yeah, I guess actually for wild antenna, at the end of each one of these little stories there's a little bit of poetry as well. So I think China going P's and O's, past Powhammer's playground close, and his Pusat-tastic lies near the track of most BRs. NYK and NBL know Powhammer's own as well, as the fisher of the sea knows Ben's MMs and root benos. But, and this is rather queer, ATLs cannot come here. O&O and DOA must go around another way. Orient Anchor Bilby all never go that way at all. UCS would have fit, if it found itself on it, and if beavers took their cargoes to Penang instead of Lagos, or if that shore Savile bore passengers to Singapore, or a Whitestar were to try a little trip to Surabaya, or a BSA went on, past Natal to Cheribon, then great Mr. Lords would come with a wire and drag them home. You know what my riddle means when you've eaten mangosteens. And there's a little follower there of talking about being able to check this out in the Times. It's some sort of shipping report I played. Yeah. Not a great poem this time round. It's a disappointment. But the rest of the story I liked. I think that's one of the better ones. But yeah, yeah, that's not bad though, that's not bad. Let's do a little bit of thinking about that. I did like that one better than a lot of them. I think what I like was the sort of mythical nature of it and the place names. That one was more like a bit of a creation myth, you know? I don't know of any mythology where those actual names are drawn from. I think they're just made up for it. It sounds like something out of a myth, you know? The tree at the centre of the world, the named great king of crabs, king of crocodiles and king of elephants. It might even be from an actual mythology, I don't know. Just one I'm not familiar with. I always like to see a bit of rat representation, especially my good third cousin, the rat who lives in the moon. I'll tell you his name, but it's a secret. But yeah. Other than that, what is this? Stretch, fair enough. Right. As per the ritual states, I'll crack my neck before we stand up, so you can hear it. Ooh. That's good. Yeah. I assume you knew, given that you're married to her. What? I'd have thought you would have known that. But yeah, there's the old man up there. I think there's a rabbit up there too, but what do you call it? He's hard to see. But yeah, there's an old man up there who fishes, and he's the one who does the tides. There's a rat up there, and his job is to make sure that there's never too much line, so the fellow who lives there can't catch the earth. There's the rabbit up there. I don't know what the rabbit's deal is. I sometimes get letters from my cousin about it, but well, I haven't had a letter in well, not since I've been down the library. We don't get postal service, so don't really know what's going on with them. But yeah, that's an old thing. And anyway, yeah, overall I think I like that story for a number of reasons. I even think it's a better creation myth than most of the other ones we've seen since the beginning. The little crab ones, the scissors. But yeah, I'm not sure about the. There's one part that I think is meant to be a dig at people. The whole Malaysia thing, I think, is aimed at the actual Malay people, which I don't have the sort of background knowledge in racial stereotypes to know if that is like a genuine crack that was being made at the Malay there. But you know, it reads a little squiffish. But I'm just going to assume that it's a fun little play on words, and that's about it. But yeah, other than that, though, mostly pretty good. Now then, we've got 2 more stories left, and of course it's very important that we save the best till last, which I definitely did. It isn't how this book is laid out. I definitely saved these for last, special. But first up we have, or well, say first up, next up we have something that is very important to our community member, who I don't think is here, but who I think of often, Vince Whiskers. Which I think is dear to most of you as well, and that is the cat that walks by himself. Because I know there is a fondness for cats amongst most of you. Can't understand why, but you like what you like, and I'll try not to judge. Yeah. The cat that walked by himself. Hear and attend and listen, for this befell and behappened, and became and was, oh my best beloved. When the tame animals were wild, the dog were wild and the horse were wild, and the cow were wild, and the sheep were wild, and the pig were wild as wild could be. Oh look, someone else is in this story. And they walked in the wild west woods by their wild lones. But the wildest of all the wild animals was a cat. He walked by himself, and all places were alike to him. The wildest of all the animals were a cat, eh? You got something you'd like to tell me, Wild? Of course, the man were wild too. He were dreadfully wild. He didn't even begun to be tame until he met the woman, and she told him that she did not like living in his wild ways. She put out a nice dry cave instead of a heap of wet leaves to lie down in, and she strewed clean sand on the floor, and she lit a nice fire of wood in the back of the cave, and she hung a dried wild horse skin, tail down, across the opening of the cave, and she said, "Wipe your feet, dear, when you come in, and now we'll keep house." That is a very cute cow. I will allay my suspicions for now, but not forget them. That night, best beloved, They ate wild sheep roasted on the hot stones, and flavoured with wild garlic and wild pepper, and wild duck stuffed with wild rice, and wild fenugreek, and wild coriander, and marrow bones of wild oxen, and wild cherries, and wild grenadillas. There's a lot of good wild stuff out there, eh? I can see what you're doing. Fair play. Then the man went to sleep in front of the fire, ever so happy, but the woman sat up, combing her hair. She took the bones of the shoulder of mutton, the big flat blade bones, and she looked at the wonderful marks on it, and she threw more wood on the fire, and she made a magic. She made the first singing magic in the world. Out in the wet wild woods, all the wild animals gathered together, where they could see the light of the fire a long way off, and they wondered what it meant. Then Wild Horse stamped with his wild foot and said, "O my friends and O my enemies, why have the man and the woman made that great light in that great cave, and what harm will it do us?" Wild Dog lifted up his wild nose and smelled the smell of the roast mutton and said, "I will go and see and look and say where I think it is good. Cat, come with me." "Nenny," said the cat, "I am the cat who walks by himself, and all places are alike to me. I will not come." "Then we can never be friends again," said Wild Dog, and he trotted off to the cave. When he had gone a little way, the cat said to himself, "All places are alike to me. Why should I not go too, and see, and look, and come away again at my own liking?" So he slipped after Wild Dog, softly, very softly, and in himself where he could hear everything. When Wild Dog reached the mouth of the cave, he lifted up the dried horse skin with his nose, and sniffed the beautiful smell of the roast mutton. And the woman, looking at the blade bones, heard him and laughed, and said, "Here comes the first wild thing out of the wild woods. What do you want?" Wild Dog said, "O my enemy and wife of my enemy, what is this that smells so good in the wild woods?" Then the woman picked up a roasted mutton bone and threw it to the Wild Dog, and said, "Wild thing out of the wild woods, taste and try." Wild Dog gnawed at the bone, and it was more delicious than anything he had ever tasted. And he said, "O my enemy and wife of my enemy, give me another." The woman said, "Wild thing out of the wild woods, help my man to hunt through the day and guard this cave at night, and I will give you as many roast bones as you need." "Ah," said the cat, listening, "this is a very wise woman, but she is not so wise as I am." Wild Dog crawled into the cave and laid his head on the woman's lap and said, "O my friend and wife of my friend, I will help your man to hunt through the day, and at night I will guard your cave." "Ah," said the cat, listening, "that is a very foolish dog." And he went back through the wet wild woods, waving his wild tail and walking by his wild line. But he never told anybody. When the man waked up, he said, "What is Wild Dog doing here?" And the woman said, "His name is not Wild Dog any more, but the first friend, because he will be our friend for always and always and always. Take him with you when you go hunting." Next night the woman cut great green armfuls of fresh grass from the water meadows and dried it before the fire so that it smelt like new mown hay. And she sat at the mouth of the cave and plaited an altar out of the horse hide, and she looked at the shoulder of mutton bone and the big broad blade bone, and she made a magic. She made the second singing magic in the world. Out in the wild woods, all the wild animals wondered what was happening to Wild Dog. At last Wild Horse stamped his foot and said, "I will go and see why Wild Dog has not returned. Cat, come with me." "Nenri," said the cat, "I am the cat who walks by himself, and all places are alike to me. I will not come." But all the same he followed Wild Horse softly, very softly, and hid himself where he could hear everything. When the woman heard Wild Horse tripping and stumbling on his long mane, she laughed and said, "Here comes the second. Wild thing out of the wild wood, what do you want?" The Wild Horse said, O enemy and wife of my enemy, where is Wild Dog?" The woman laughed, picked up the blade bone, and looked at it and said, "Wild thing out of the wild wood, you did not come here for Wild Dog, but for the sake of this good grass." And Wild Horse, tripping and stumbling on his long mane, said, "That is true. Give it me to eat." The woman said, "Wild thing out of the wild woods, Bend your wild head and wear what I give you. You shall eat the wonderful grass 3 times a day. Ah, said the cat, listening. This is a clever woman, but she is not so clever as I am. Wild Horse bent his wild head, and the woman slipped the plaid altar over it. Wild Horse breathed on the woman's feet and said, O my mistress and wife of my master, I will be your servant for the sake of the wonderful grass. Ah, said the cat, listening, that is a very foolish horse. And he went back through the wet wild wood, waving his wild tail and walking by his wild line. But he never told anybody. When the man and the dog come back from hunting, the man said, What is Wild Horse doing here? And the woman said, His name is not Wild Horse anymore, but the first servant, because he will carry us from place to place for always and always and always, riding his back when you go hunting. Next day, holding a wild head high, that a wild horse should not catch in the wild trees, wild cow come up to the cave, and the cat followed and hid itself just the same as before. And everything happened just the same as before, and the cat said the same things as before. And when Wild Cow had promised to give her milk to the woman every day in exchange for the wonderful grass, the cat went back through the white wildwood, waving his wild tail and walking by his wild line, just the same as before. But he never told nobody. When the man and the horse and the dog came home from hunting and asked the same question, same as before, the woman said, Her name is not Wild Cow anymore, but the giver of good food. She will give us the warm white milk for always and always and always. I will take care of her while you and the first friend and the first servant go hunting. Next day the cat waited to see if any other wild things would go up the cave, but no one moved in the wet wild woods, so the cat walked there by herself. And he saw the woman milking the cow. He saw the light of the fire in the cave. He smelt the smell of the warm white milk. The cat said, O enemy and wife of my enemy, where did Wild Cow go? The woman laughed and said, Wild thing out of the wild woods, go back to the woods again, for I have braided up my hair, and I have put away the magic blade bow, and we have no more need of either friend or servant in our cave. The cat said, I am not friend, and I am not a servant. I am the cat who walks by himself, and I wish to come into your cave. The woman said, Then why did you not come with the first friend on the first night? The cat was very angry and said, Has Wild Dog told tales of me? The woman laughed and said, You are the cat who walks by himself, and all places are alike to you. You are neither a friend nor a servant, you have said it yourself. Go away and walk by yourself in all places alike. Then Cat pretended to be sorry and said, Must I never come into the cave? Must I never sit by the warm fire? Must I never drink the warm white milk? You are very wise and very beautiful. You should not be cruel, even to a cat. The woman said, I knew I was wise, but I did not know I was beautiful. So I will make a bargain with you. If ever I say one word in your praise, you may come into the cave. And if you say 2 words in my praise, said the cat. I never shall, said the wild woman. But if I say 2 words in your praise, you may sit by the fire in the cave. And if you say 3 words, I never shall, said the woman. But if I say 3 words in your praise, you may drink the warm milk 3 times a day, for always and always and always. And the cat arched his back and said, Now let the curtain at the mouth of the cave, and the fire at the back of the cave, and the milk pots that stand beside the fire, remember what my enemy, and the wife of my enemy has said. And he went away through the wet wild woods, weaving his wild tail, and walking by his wild line. At night, when the man and the horse and the dog come home from hunting, the woman did not tell them of the bargain she had made with the cat, because she were afraid they might not like him. The cat went far and away and hid himself in the wild wet woods by his wild line for a long time, till the woman forgot all about him. Only the bat, the little upside down bat that hung inside the cave, knew where Cat hid, and every evening Bat would fly to Cat with news of what were happening. One evening Bat said, There was a baby in the cave. He's new and pink and fat and small, and the woman's very fond of him. Ah, said the cat, listening. And what is the baby fond of? He's fond of things that are soft and tickle, said the bat. He's fond of warm things to hold in his arm when he goes to sleep. He's fond of being played with. He's fond of all them things. Ah, said the cat, listening. Then my time has come. Next night, the cat walked through the wet wildwood, and lived very near the cave till morning time. A man and dog and horse went hunting. The woman was busy cooking that morning, and the baby cried and interrupted. So she carried her outside the cave and gave him an handful of pebbles to play with. But still the baby cried. Then the cat put out his paddy paw and patted the baby on the cheek, and it cooed. Then cat rubbed against its fat knees and tickled it under its fat chin with his tail. The baby laughed, and the woman heard him and smiled. Then the bat, the little upside-down bat that hung in the mouth of the cave, said, "Oh my hostess, and wife of my host, and mother of my host's son, a wild thing from the wild woods is most beautifully playing with your baby." "A blessing on that wild thing, whoever he may be," said the woman, straightening her back. "For I was a busy woman this morning, and he has done me a service." That very minute and second, best beloved, a dried oilskin curtain that was stretched tail down in the mouth of the cave fell down, whoosh, because it remembered the bargain she had made with the cat. When the woman went to pick it up, lo and behold, the cat was sitting quite comfortably inside the cave. "O enemy of my wife, and enemy and mother of my enemy," said the cat. Sorry. "O my enemy and wife, my enemy and mother of my enemy," said the cat. "It is I, for you have spoken a word in my praise, and now I can sit within the cave always and always and always. But I am still the cat who walks by himself, and all places are alike to me." The woman was very angry, and shut her lips tight, and took up her spinning wheel and began to spin. But the baby cried because the cat had gone away, and the woman could not hush it, for it struggled and kicked and grew black in the face. "O my enemy, and wife of my enemy, and mother of my enemy," said the cat, "take a strand of the thread that you are spinning and tie it to your spinning wheel, and drag it along the floor, and I will show you a magic which shall make your baby laugh as loudly as he now is crying." "I will do," said the woman, "as I am at my wit's end, but I will not thank you for it." She tied the thread to the little clay spindle wheel, and drew it across the floor, and the cat ran after it, patted it with his paws, and rolled head over heels and tossed it backward over his shoulders, and chased it between his hard legs and pretended to lose it, and pounced down upon it again, till the baby laughed as loudly as it had been crying, and scrambled after the cat and frolicked all over the cave till it grew tired and settled down asleep with the cat in its arms. "Now," said the cat, "I will sing the baby a song that shall keep him asleep for an hour." And he began to purr loud and low, loud and low. Till the baby fell fast asleep. One smiled as she looked down upon the two of them, and said, "That was wonderfully done. No question, but you are very clever, O cat." That very minute and second, best beloved, the smoke of the fire at the back of the cave come down in clouds from the roof. Puff! Because it remembered the bargain she had made with the cat. And when it had cleared away, lo and behold, the cat was sitting quite comfortably close to the fire. O enemy, and wife of my enemy, and mother of my enemy," said the cat, "it is I, but you have spoken a second word in my praise, and now I can sit by the warm fire at the back of the cave for always and always and always. But still I am the cat who walks by himself, and all places are alike to me." Then the woman was very angry, and let down her hair and put more wood on the fire, and brought out a broad blade bone of the shoulder of mutton, and began to make a magic that should prevent her from saying a third word in praise of the cat. It were not a singing magic, best beloved, it were a still magic. And by the cave grew so still that a little wee mouse crept out the corner and ran across the floor. "O my enemy, and wife of my enemy, and mother of my enemy," said the cat, "is that little mouse part of your magic?" "Oh gee, no indeed," said the woman, and she dropped the blade bone and jumped upon the footstool in front of the fire, and braided up her hair very quick for fear the mouse should run of it. "Ah," said the cat, watching, "then the mouse will do me no harm if I eat it." "No," said the woman, braiding up her hair, "eat it quickly and I will be grateful to you. I will ever be grateful to you." Cat made one jump and caught the little mouse, and the woman said, "100 thanks. Even the first friend is not quick enough to catch little mice as you have done. You must be very wise." That very moment and second, her best beloved, the milk pot that stood by the fire, cracked in 2 pieces, because it remembered the bargain she had made with the cat. And when the woman jumped down from the footstool, lo and behold, the cat was lapping up the warm white milk that lay in one of the broken pieces. "Oh, my enemy, and wife of my enemy, and mother of my enemy," said the cat, "it is I, who have spoken 3 words in my praise, and now I can drink the warm white milk 3 times a day, for always and always and always. But still I am the cat who walks by himself, and all places are alike to me." Then the woman laughed and set the cat a bowl of the warm white milk and said, "O cat, you are as clever as a man, but remember that your bargain was not made with the man or the dog, and I do not know what they will do when they come home." "What is that to me?" said the cat. "If I have my place in the cave by the fire and my warm white milk 3 times a day, I do not care what the man or the dog can do." That evening, when the man and the dog come into the cave, the woman told them all the story of the bargain, while the cat sat by the fire and smiled. The man said, "Yes, but he's not made a bargain with me, with all proper men after me." Then he took off his 2 leather boots, and he took up his little stone axe, that makes 3, and he fetched a piece of wood and an hatchet, that's 5 altogether. And he set them out in a row, and he said, "Now we will make our bargain. If you do not catch mice when you are in the cave for always and always and always, I will throw these 5 things at you whenever I see you, and so shall all proper men do after me." "Ah," said the woman, listening, "that is very clever. That is a very clever cat, but he is not so clever as my man." The cat counted the 5 things, and they looked very knobby, and he said, "I will catch mice when I am in the cave for always and always and always, but still I am the cat who walks by himself, and all places are alike to me." "Not when I'm there," said the man. "If you had not said that last, I would have put all these things away for always and always and always. But now I'm going to throw my 2 boots and my little stone axe, that makes 3, at you whenever I meet you, and so shall all proper men do after me." And the dog said, "Wait a minute, he's not made a bargain with me or with all proper dogs after me." And he showed his teeth and said, "If you are not kind to the baby while I am in the cave for always and always and always, I will hunt you till I catch you, and when I catch you I will bite you, and so shall all proper dogs do after me." "Ah," said the woman, listening, "that is a very clever cat, but he is not so clever as the dog." Cat counted the dog's teeth, and they looked very pointed, and he said, "I will be kind to the baby while I am in the cave, as long as he does not pull my tail too hard, for always and always and always. But still I am the cat that walks by himself, and all places are alike to me." "Not when I'm there," said the dog. "If you had not said that last, I would have shut my mouth for you always and always and always. But now I'm going to hunt you up trees whenever I meet you, and so shall all proper dogs do after me." Then the man threw his 2 boots and his little stone axe, that makes 3, at the cat, and the cat ran out of the cave, and the dog chased him up a tree. And from that day to this, best beloved, 3 proper men out of 5 will always throw things at a cat whenever they meet him, and all proper dogs will chase him out of a tree. But the cat keeps his side of the bargain too. He'll kill mice, and he'll be kind to babies when he's home, just as long as they do not pull his tail too hard. But when he's done that, then between times, when the moon gets up and night comes, he is the cat that walks by himself, and all places are alike to him. Then he goes out to the wet wild woods, or up the wet wild trees, or on the wet wild roofs, waving his wild tail and walking by his wild life. And a little bit of poetry to follow. Pussy can sit by the fire and sing, Pussy can climb a tree, or play with a silly old cork and string, amuse herself, not me. But I like Binky, my dog, because he knows how to behave. So Binky's the same as the first friend was, and I'm the man of the cave. Pussy will play Man Friday till it's time to wet her paw, and make her walk on the windowsill for the footprint Crusoe saw. Then she fluffles her tail and mews and scratches and won't attend. But Binky will play whenever I choose, and he is my true first friend. Pussy will rub my knees with her head to pretend that she loves me hard. The very minute I go to my bed, Pussy runs out in the yard. And there she stays till the morning light, so I know it is only pretend. But Binky, he stores at my feet all night, and he is my fastest friend. That's the end of, The Cat Who Walked by Herself. Now the poem at the end, and the story in general, does seem to show a particular preference for dogs over cats. And while I am not the fondest of cats, I will say that I also don't love dogs, because if you've ever seen a Jack Russell Terrier doing ratting, it's an horrible sight to behold, indeed. That being the case though, not the worst animals in the world. Dogs only the fourth worst, and cats the third worst, so you know, can't hate them. Still, that was a good story. I always like a story where I learned something, and this one I did learn something. I understand why you were all so fond of cats now, because the cats trick you into it. The story is very clear about that. They come in and they trick you until you like them. And that's fair enough, cats can be very clever like that. But I do invite you to keep your guard up, even when they do the little thing where they run about after a piece of string. And as for the catching of mice, well, that's a wicked thing, I think, but still, nothing to be said for it, nothing to be said for it. But anyway, I did say that was the second to last, and I was saving the best to last, didn't I? So then, with all those wild things and those cats you like so much, what else could I have saved that was better till last? Isn't that a question to be asked then, friends? Well, let me have a swallow of water, and I shall enlighten you. Now then, I'm always appreciative of a story that has a rat in it, as I mentioned during the story about the crab. Because even when the rat itself is not the main focus of the story, it's nice to have a little bit of representation. And much in the same way, I imagine that if you are some sort of other animal, you know, a cat, an owl, maybe some sort of moth, it's nice to have an animal that looks like you in the story, even if it's not exactly one-to-one. And so to that end, I have saved the story for last that I think will please someone, even if it's not a perfect match. So, this, the last of our stories, is The Butterfly That Stamped. Dedicated to a particular, almost butterfly, who I know hangs out here sometimes. This, oh my best beloved, is a story. A story quite different from the other stories. A story about the most wise sovereign, Suleiman bin Dawood Solomon, the son of David. There are 355 stories about Suleiman bin Dawood. This is not one of them. It is not the story of the lapwing who found the water, or the upa who shaded Suleiman bin Dawood from the heat. It is not the story of the glass pavement, or the ruby with the crooked hole, or the gold bars of Balkis. It is the story of the butterfly that stamped. Now attend all over again and listen. Suleiman bin Dawood was wise. He understood what the beast said, what the bird said, and what the fishes said, and what the insects said. He understood what the rocks said deep under the earth when they bowed in towards each other and groaned. And he understood what the trees said when they rustled in the middle of the morning. He understood everything from the bishops on a bench to the hyssop on the wall. And Balkis, his head queen and most beautiful Queen Balkis, were nearly as wise as he were. Suleiman bin Dawood was strong. Upon the third finger of his right hand he wore a ring. When he turned it once, afrits and jinns come out of the earth to do whatever he told them. When he turned it twice, fairies come down from the sky to do whatever he told them. When he turned it 3 times, the very great angel Azrael with the sword came dressed as a water carrier and told him news of the 3 worlds, above, below and here. Yet Suleiman bin Dawood were not proud. He very seldom showed off, and when he did he was sorry for it. Once he tried to feed all the animals in the world in one day. When the food were ready, an animal come out of the deep sea and ate it up in 3 mouthfuls. Suleiman bin Dawood were very surprised and said, "O animal, what are you?" And the animal said, "O king, live forever. I am the smallest of 30,000 brothers, and our home is the bottom of the sea. We heard that you were going to feed all the animals in the world, and my brother sent me to ask what dinner would be ready." Suleiman bin Dawood were more surprised than ever and said, "O animal, you've eaten all the dinner that I made ready for all the animals in the world." The animal said, "O king, live forever, but did you really call that a dinner? Where I come from, we eat twice as much as that between meals." And Suleiman bin Dawood fell flat on his face and said, "O animal, I gave that dinner to show what a great and rich king I was, not because I really wanted to be kind to the animals. Now I'm ashamed and it serves me right." Suleiman bin Dawood were really a truly wise man, best beloved. After that he never forgot that it was silly to show off, And now the real story part of my story begins. He married ever so many wives. He married 999 wives, beside the most beautiful Balkis. And they all lived in a great golden palace in the middle of a lovely garden with fountains. He didn't really want 999 wives, but in those days everybody married ever so many wives. And of course the king had to marry ever so many more, just to show that he was the king. Some of the wives were nice, but some were simply horrid. The horrid ones quarrelled with the nice ones, and made them horrid too. And then they would all quarrel with Suleiman bin Daoud, and that was horrid for him. But Balkis, the most beautiful, never quarrelled with Suleiman bin Daoud. She loved him too much. She sat in her rooms, in the golden palace, or walked in the palace garden, and was truly sorry for him. Of course, if he had chosen to turn his ring on his finger and call up the jinns or the afrits, they would have magicked all those 999 quarrelsome wives into white mules of the desert, or greyhounds, or pomegranate seeds. But Suleiman bin Daoud thought that would be showing off. So when they quarrelled too much, he only walked by himself in one part of the beautiful palace garden, and wished he had never been born. One day, when they had quarrelled for 3 weeks, all 999 wives together, Suleiman bin Daoud went out for peace and quiet as usual. And among the orange trees he met Balkis, the most beautiful, very sorrowful, because Suleiman bin Daoud was so worried. And she said to him, "O my lord and light of my eyes, turn the ring upon your finger, and show these queens of Egypt and Mesopotamia and Persia and China that you are the great and terrible king." But Suleiman bin Daoud shook his head and said, "O my lady and delight of my life, remember the animal that came out of the sea and made me ashamed before all the animals in the world, because I showed off. Now if I showed off before these queens of Persia and Egypt and Abyssinia and China, merely because they worry me, I might be made even more ashamed than I have been." And Balkis, the most beautiful, said, "O my lord and treasure of my soul, what will you do?" And Suleiman bin Daoud said, "O my lady and content of my heart, I shall continue to endure my fate at the hands of those 999 queens who vex me with their continual quarrelling." So he went on between the lilies and the loquats, and the roses and the canas, and the heavy-scented ginger plants that grew in the garden, till he come to the great camphor tree that were called the camphor tree of Suleiman bin Daoud. But Balkis hid among the tall irises, and the spotted bamboos, and the red lilies beyond the camphor tree, so as to be near her own true love, Suleiman bin Daoud. Presently 2 butterflies flew under the tree, quarrelling. Suleiman bin Daoud heard one say to the other, "I wonder at your presumption in talking to me like this. Don't you know that if I stamped my foot, all Suleiman bin Daoud's palace and the garden here would immediately vanish in a clap of thunder?" And Suleiman bin Daoud forgot his 999 bothersome wives, and laughed till the camphor tree shook at the butterfly's boast. He held out his finger and said, "Little man, come here." The butterfly were dreadfully frightened. "Fair enough that you kindly, Abbe. I'll drink your health. Cheers." And the ads is about to come on. How much we got left? Yeah. Do I pause the ads and try and push through? Yeah, so we've got 3 stitches left. Yeah. Hey Blake. Yeah, we got a story about butterflies, which I thought would be nice for you. But yeah, thank you for the hydrate, Abby. Yeah, I'll pause the ads and we'll push through the end on the snoozing. But where was I? Yes. The butterfly was dreadfully frightened, but he managed to fly up to the hand of Suleiman bin Daoud and clung there, fanning himself. Suleiman bin Daoud bent his head and whispered very softly, "Little man, you know that all your stamping wouldn't bend one blade of grass. What made you tell that awful fib to your wife? For doubtless she is your wife." The butterfly looked at Suleiman bin Daoud and saw the most wise king's eyes twinkle like stars on a frosty night. And he picked up his courage with both wings, and he put his head on one side and said, "O king, live forever. She is my wife, and you know what wives are like." Suleiman bin Daoud smiled in his beard and said, "Yes, I know, little brother." "I must keep them in order somehow," said the butterfly, "and she's been quarrelling with me all the morning. I said that to quiet her." And Suleiman bin Daoud said, "May it quiet her. Go back to your wife, little brother, and let me hear what you say. Back flew the butterfly to his wife, who were all of a twitter beyond leaf. She said to him, "He heard you. Suleiman bin Daoud himself heard you." "Heard me?" said the butterfly. "Of course he did. I meant him to hear me." "And what did he say? Oh, what did he say?" "Well," said the butterfly, fanning himself most importantly, "between you and me, my dear, of course I don't blame him, because his palace must have cost a great deal, and all the oranges are just ripening. He asked me not to stamp, and I promised I wouldn't." "Gracious," said his wife, and sat quite quiet. But Suleiman bin Daoud laughed till tears ran down his face at the impudence of the bad little butterfly. Balkis, the most beautiful, stood up behind the tree among the red lilies and smiled at her to herself, though she had heard all this talk. She thought, "If I am wise, I can yet save my lord from the persecutions of those quarrelsome queens." And she held out her finger and whispered softly to the butterfly's wife, "Little woman, come here." Up flew the butterfly's wife, very frightened, and clung to Balkis's white hand. Balkis bent her beautiful head down and whispered, "Little woman, do you believe what your husband has just said?" The butterfly's wife looked at Balkis and saw the most beautiful queen's eyes shining like deep pools with starlight on them. And she picked up her courage with both wings and said, "O queen, be lovely forever. You know what menfolk are like." And the queen Balkis, the wise Balkis of Sheba, put her hand to her lips to hide a smile and said, "Little sister, I know." "They get angry," said the butterfly's wife, fanning herself quickly, "over nothing at all. We must humour them. O queen, they never mean half they say. But pleases my husband to believe that I believe he can make Suleiman bin Daoud's palace disappear by stamping his foot. I'm sure I don't care. He'll forget all about it tomorrow." "Little sister," said Balkis, "you are quite right. But the next time he begins to boast, take him at his word. Ask him to stamp and see what will happen. We know what menfolk are like, don't we? You'll be very much ashamed." Away flew the butterfly's wife to her husband, and in 5 minutes they was quarrelling worse than ever. "Remember," said the butterfly, "remember what I can do if I stamp my foot." "I don't believe you one little bit," said the butterfly's wife. "I should very much like to see it done. Suppose you stamp now." "I promised Suleiman bin Daoud I wouldn't," said the butterfly. "I don't want to break my promise." "It wouldn't matter if you did," said his wife. "You couldn't bend a blade of grass with your stamping. I dare you to do it," she said. "Stamp, stamp, stamp." Suleiman bin Daoud, sitting under the camphor tree, heard every word of this, and he laughed as he had never laughed in his life before. He forgot all about his queens. He forgot about the animal that come out of the sea. He forgot about Sharnoff. He just laughed with joy, and Balkis, on the other side of the tree, smiled, because her own true love was so joyful. Presently the butterfly, very hot and puffy, come whirling back under the shadow of the camphor tree and said to Suleiman, "She wants me to stamp. She wants to see what will happen. Oh, Suleiman bin Daoud, you know I can't do it, and now she'll never believe a word I say. She'll laugh at me to the end of my days." "No, little brother," said Suleiman bin Daoud, "she will never laugh at you again." And he turned the ring on his finger, just for the little butterfly's sake, not for the sake of showing off. And lo and behold, 4 huge jinn came out of the earth. "Slaves," said Suleiman bin Daoud, "and this gentleman on my finger," that where the butterfly was sitting, "stamps his left forefoot, he will make my palace and these gardens disappear in a clap of thunder. When he stamps again, you will bring them back carefully. Now, little brother," he said, "go back to your wife and stamp all you've a mind to." Away threw the butterfly to his wife, who was crying, "I dare you to do it! I dare you to do it! Stamp, stamp now! Stamp!" Balkis saw the 4 great jinns stoop down to the 4 corners of the garden, with the palace in the middle, and she clapped her hands softly and said, "At last, Suleiman bin Daoud will do for the sake of a butterfly what he ought to have done long ago for his own sake, and the quarrelsome queens will be frightened." Then the butterfly stamped. The jinns jerked the palace and the garden 1,000 miles into the air. There was a most awful thunderclap, and everything grew inky black. The butterfly's wife fluttered about in the dark, crying, "Oh, I'll be good. I'm so sorry I spoke. Only bring back the gardens, my dear darling husband, and I'll never contradict again." The butterfly was nearly as frightened as his wife, and Suleiman bin Daoud laughed so much that it was several minutes before he found breath enough to whisper to the butterfly, "Stamp again, little brother, Give me back my palace, most great magician. Yes, give him back the palace, said the butterfly's wife, still flying about in the dark like a moth. Give him back his palace, and don't let's stay and have any more horrid magic. Well, my dear, said the butterfly, as bravely as he could, you see what your nagging has led to? Of course it doesn't make any difference to me. I'm used to this kind of thing. But as a favour to you and to Suleiman bin Daoud, I don't mind putting things right. So he stamped once more. In that instant the jinns let down the palace and the gardens without even a bump. The sun shone on the dark green orange leaves. The fountains played among the pink Egyptian lilies. The birds went on singing, and the butterfly's wife lay on her side under the camphor tree, wagging her wings and panting, "Oh, I'll be good, I'll be good." Suleiman bin Daoud could hardly speak for laughing. He leaned back all weak and coffee, and shook his finger at the butterfly and said, "Oh, great wizard, what is the sense of returning to me my palace if at the same time you slay me with mirth?" Then came a terrible noise, for all the 999 queens ran out of the palace, shrieking and shouting and calling for their babies. They hurried down the great marble steps below the fountain, 100 abreast, and the most wise Balkis went stately forward to meet them and said, "What is your trouble, O queens?" They stood on the marble steps, 100 abreast, and shouted, "What is our trouble? We are living peacefully in our golden palaces as our custom, when upon a sudden the palace disappeared, and we were left sitting in a thick and noisome darkness. And it thundered, and jinns and afrits moved about in the darkness. That is our trouble. O head queen, and we are most extremely troubled on account of that trouble. It was a troublesome trouble, unlike any trouble we have known." Then Balkis, the most beautiful queen, Suleiman bin Daoud's very best beloved, queen that was of Sheba and Saba and the rivers of the gold of the south, and the desert of Zin and the towers of Zimbabwe, Balkis, almost as wise as the most wise Suleiman bin Daoud himself, said, "It is nothing, O queens. A butterfly has made complaint against his wife because she quarrelled with him, and has pleased our lord Suleiman bin Daoud to teach her a lesson in low speaking and humbleness, for that is counted a virtue among the wives of the butterflies." Then up spoke an Egyptian queen, the daughter of a pharaoh, and she said, "Our palace cannot be plucked up by the root like a leek for the sake of a little insect. No, Suleiman bin Daoud must be dead, and what we heard and saw was the earth thundering and the darkening of the news." Then Balkis beckoned that bold queen without looking at her, and said to the others, "Come and see." They come down the marble steps, 100 abreast, and beneath his camphor tree, still weak with laughing, they saw the most wise Suleiman bin Daoud, and they heard him say, "O wife of my brother in the air." Fair, we're just about done there, but yeah. Have a good rest of your day. Well, thank you for stopping by, I do appreciate it. "O wife of my brother in the air, remember after this to please your husband in all things, lest he be provoked to stamp his foot. Yet again, for he has said that great he is used to this magic, and he is most eminently a great magician. Would they? You have a lovely day. One who steals away the very palace of Suleiman bin Daoud himself. Go in peace, little folk." He kissed them on the wings, and they flew away. Then all the queens except Balkis, the most beautiful and splendid Balkis, who stood apart smiling, fell flat on their faces, for they said, "If these things are done when the butterfly is displeased with his wife, what should be done to us who have vexed our king with our loud speaking and open quarrelling through many a day?" And they put their veils over their heads and put their hands over their mouths, and they tiptoed back to the palace most mousy quiet. Then Balkis, the most beautiful and excellent Balkis, went forward, through the red lilies into the shade of the camphor tree, and laid her hand upon Suleiman bin Daoud's shoulder, and said, "O my lord and treasure of my soul, rejoice, for we have taught the queens of Egypt and Mesopotamia, and Abyssinia and Persia and India and China a great and memorable teaching." And Suleiman bin Daoud, still looking after the butterflies where they played in the sunlight, said, "O my lady and my jewel of my felicity, when did this happen? For I have been jesting with a butterfly ever since I came into the garden." And he told Balkis what he had done. Balkis, the tender and most lovely Balkis, said, "O my lord and regent of my existence, I hid behind the camphor tree and saw it all. It was I who told the butterfly's wife to ask the butterfly to stamp, because I hoped that for the sake of the jest my lord would make some great magic, and the queens would see it and be frightened." And she told him what the queens had said and seen and thought. And Suleiman bin Daoud rose up from his seat under the camphor tree, and stretched his arms and rejoiced, and said, O my lady and sweetener of my days, know that if I had made a magic against my queens for the sake of pride or anger, as I made that feast for all the animals, I should certainly have been put to shame. But by means of your wisdom I made the magic for the sake of a jest, and for the sake of a little butterfly, and, behold, it has also delivered me from the vexations of my vexatious wives. Tell me, therefore, O lady and heart of my heart, how did you come to be so wise? And Baucis, the queen, beautiful and tall, looked up in a Suleiman bin Daoud's eyes, and put her head a little on one side, just like the butterfly, and said, First, O my lord, because I loved you, and secondly, O my lord, because I know what women folk are. Then they went up to the palace and lived happily ever afterwards. But weren't it clever of Bilquis? And the poem. There were never a queen like Baucis, from here to the wide world's end. But Baucis talked to a butterfly as you would talk to a friend. There were never a king like Solomon, not since the world began. But Solomon talked to a butterfly as a man would talk to a man. She was queen of Sabea, and he were Asia's lord, when both of them talked to butterflies when they took their walks abroad. The end. And the moral of the story is, those who are kind to Lepidoptera shall always come to good ends. So be nice to butterflies and the moths, or else. And that is the end of the entire thing of Just So Stories. And we've only got a couple of minutes, it seems to me now, before the ads come back on, so we'll do our little end thoughts quite quickly. I like these overall. I think generally they're pretty good. I think they start stronger than the rest of it goes on, but they're pretty good overall. But I am, again, disappointed that we weren't fully able to get the measure of some of them. In fact, we weren't able to get the full measure of any of them, because all of them had illustrations with little side texts. And one of them we couldn't do at all. It's a story we'll have to come back to. It's a story that I enjoyed, and I hope you've enjoyed it too. Well, I'm glad someone enjoyed it. But yeah, thank you all for being here. I do appreciate it. I hope you especially enjoyed that last one, Plague. I hope you've enjoyed our, the other things. Ooh. And it looks like there is no one who I'm following who's live. You're very welcome, Nesca. You're all very welcome for having been here. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. Do any of you know someone who's live who I could braid into? Because apparently I don't have anyone at the minute. Oh wait, no, Varys is live. It just is the buttons not working. Well, this is live then. We raided Varys a lot. Oh, Skitters the Moth is raided. Yeah. Quite a few people. Les is raided. Les is live. God. Well, we're raiding to him then. Yeah. Well, you're very welcome. I hope you all enjoyed it. Yeah, I don't know why the button isn't working sometimes. But yeah. Red, Les. You're very welcome, Tanner. I'm glad you managed to catch some of it, and I'm glad you enjoyed it. Yeah. You're very welcome, Wild. I thought you'd gone already. So, yeah. I do appreciate all of you being here. There we are. We're raiding the Les now. But yeah, I do hope you enjoy the rest of your day, whatever time it may be. Well, and the ads are starting in 1 minute, so we'll have to end fairly sharpish. But yeah. But as I say, good stories. I hope you enjoyed them. I hope you enjoyed your time here. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. And as always, ta-ra!